I'm Rob Galuzzo. I'm from Long Island. Hey.
That's me. You hear that shit right there? You know what that is? That's my new record, baby.
Hey, that's
it's
Rob Galuzzo.
Done. It's done, finally. And I'm very excited about it. It will not be out by the time that this... Yeah, we're started. Yeah, put your headphones on. This is anarchy already. Yes.
So basically, tell them about the bar we found where we can keep the witch out.
The witch out. I like it's like sprinkling like brick dust across the door.
I'm sorry. Let's bring you all up to speed. So I finished my record from November.
Did we even do an intro?
No, this is the intro.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it. Come down.
Okay. No,
it's
I'm
like a
uppity,
movie where
guys.
the credits
I'm
don't
uppity.
pop up. The title doesn't come till like 5 minutes.
This is like the opening 5-minute scene, and
Yeah.
then everything gets sent. But anyway.
Guys, I can't handle changes like this.
Don't ruin it, Bekah.
Don't ruin it.
Everything in your husband's life. Don't ruin this. Okay?
Okay. So, not this week, but next week you can check out my record. But that's not important. What's important is that there is a place next door. What is it called again?
McLeod's.
McLeod's it opened up a year ago, and it is a brewery.
Uh-huh.
And Elric, Kane, and I just came from there.
Well, yes, and it has alcohol, which is great. That already keeps Bekah away a little.
We're ready.
But
this is the best part.
The best thing, well, like a witch. If a witch or a demon or something, and you create a salt ring around you.
Oh, can I be a demon?
Yes.
I want
She's
the
like a
salt
demon.
ring.
If you put a salt ring around you, they can't enter. Well, for us, Bekah is deathly allergic to peanuts.
Deathly.
And there are peanut shells
all over the floor.
So we can do whatever
That is our
we want.
safe haven.
We
So,
talk
like,
about
when we
everything.
need
We
to
have our
escape
pants
Bekah,
off.
I
we're
know.
right next
Is-
door.
The pants off. Didn't you guys say there was a pig over there
There was
one
a
day?
pig.
There was a pig once,
I think we call it
Not
Bekah.
today.
We call it little Bekah.
God. Yeah. Our guest in the room is flabbergasted.
We don't
by
have a
this.
guest in the room.
Not yet, but it's going to be one of those episodes. I hope you're
my
ready.
God.
But it was pretty special that we can talk about her in any way, which way we want. And
Thanks, assholes.
we come in here and are super nice and kiss your ass and pretend, oh, I love Fangoria.
Yes. Okay. Oh, hey. So, by the way,
gonna
this
eat
is
my
where the
Twister.
We do love
credits
her.
come up. I'm Rob G from Icons of Fright.
Hi, Rob.
Hi. Elric Kane from Inside Horror.
Yes.
Budweiser drinker.
Which we were being begged to go back to do this week.
That was kind of shocking.
in the
You
middle
don't have
of
to talk about that.
well, I will because I could give a shit. In the middle of Etheria, all these people are everywhere, and the woman who runs the studio just go, "I want you back so hard, blah blah blah. We can, do blah, and it'll be so great, and we can pay up to like $30 a show." And I'm just, pfft, whatever. I'd rather work for free than for $30.
And you
what
do.
kind of whore do I look like? Exactly.
And you do.
Exactly. Here we are.
And Rebecca McHenry from Fangoria.
I'll just be outside where you guys want me to be. It's kind of sad.
We're gonna build our peanut fort to keep you out.
No, I do wish you could have come. I think you would have
Slim's
liked
the
the
bitch.
bar.
Yeah,
We
it's
need to find a
pretty-
bar that's peanut free for you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Some
thank
dude
you.
started randomly doing poetry about beer. I mean, that's why I love this ridiculous town.
It was
like,
really
Did you
strange.
just stand up and start doing that?
No, like the owner, like stopped everybody. He's like, "Can I have your attention?" And start, and she's like, he wrote all these poetry about beer, and it's on the walls right now, and we're gonna have him read some.
It was pretty
But-
goofy.
Anyway,
I loved it.
I'm
Anyway,
not hip
welcome-
enough to go there. Like,
Okay.
I would stand up and be like, your poem sucks. I mean, like, I'm really not hip enough to be
I can't
there.
believe you have like an early 90s, 80s t-shirt on.
Gargoyles fucking rocks.
Well, look, all right,
I wish
welcome
I
back
had
to our horror
context to our
show. Welcome to the horror podcast. Okay, so you know who we are, and we've already wasted enough time. What have we seen this week? Who's ready?
I am.
Go.
I have notes. I watched Daughters of Darkness, which had on my queue. Thanks.
Which one is that?
Harry Kumel's film.
Lesbian. It's a husband
Delphine
and wife,
Seyrig?
or I guess they're like newlyweds, travel to this kind of like oceanside community, and they start getting seduced by this
Hotel.
vampire
it's a
hotel.
big
Yeah,
hotel,
it's a big
oceanside
hotel.
hotel.
It's kind of like a luxurious hotel, and they start getting seduced by a vampire
Delphine
and her
Seyrig.
lesbian
From last year,
mistress.
Marion Bad.
Everything he's saying.
Will you calm down?
Yeah, he's uppity.
I'm just
It's
adding
from
notes. It's like a
1971,
director's
and I
commentary.
have to say, like, at first, I hadn't seen this one yet, and I'm usually kind of into my lesbian vampire Eurotrash films. But for some reason, I had not seen this yet, and I have to say, the start is a bit slow.
Oh, what
and
a shock.
even Elric said
What a
that.
shock. No, I'm saying it as you.
Oh, you're saying it as me. But it picks up quickly, and it's fucking beautiful. Like that's what does it for me. If it's a slow film, I want something pretty to look
It's
at, and
gorgeous.
this
Yes,
one
it would
is
be ravishing.
absolutely gorgeous, and the soundtrack is wonderful.
DVD or
Is that
Blu-ray?
I was watching
Severed release, maybe?
Yeah, it was a Netflix rental, so I don't
okay,
know
so
what
it
they
counts.
sent me.
You know what? Because I confuse it with Daughter of Darkness, which was a made-for-TV movie by Stuart Gordon that stars Anthony
even seen that.
Perkins
Yeah,
and
I never saw this one.
Mia Sara from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's a good one.
That's just random.
Flare the Bueller's
I did,
Day
yeah.
Off.
There's a little slurring. There's a little beer drinking.
Well,
No, Daughters of Darkness is a really gorgeous
Yeah,
movie.
it's absolutely
Is it?
beautiful.
It's one of the best looking movies, just period.
I
Like
have to
just
say,
the
like-
contrast of color and
Yeah, it was absolutely
and
amazing.
Delphine Seyrig, who the actress who plays the seductress, the
Is
blonde,
amazingly
she was
gorgeous.
in, she was in all these great French films of the 60s and 70s, and she is just she died pretty young. I think she died at like 44 or something, and she just is one of those presences on screen. Like people forget that it wasn't just America that had stars. She was a star.
Yeah.
No,
France,
for me, there's like a few ladies who always appear in those kind of Eurotrashy lesbian vampire movies that I like. Like Miranda Soledad is in a number of them, but I absolutely love her. She's another one that just like sizzles off screen. So yeah, she's amazing. This one was amazing. And then additionally, I watched Madman for the first time ever.
On a Blu-ray or the new
on
release?
The Blu-ray. I watched
I've
this
never seen it, so
Factory
I'm
Blu-ray.
curious.
See, I'd never seen
I'd
it
never
either.
seen it.
For some
What'd you
reason,
think?
I loved it.
Loved
Seriously,
it.
it was fucking amazing.
Did you watch the documentary yet?
I didn't. And I
right.
know you did work on
My
that, right?
first editing credit is the documentary on Madman.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I'm very
awesome.
excited about it.
I need to check it out because I remember seeing this when it came out, and for some reason, I thought it looked really kind of.
It looks like Darkman. The cover and everything looks like Darkman.
For some reason, for
Kind
me,
of, but it's not that at all.
yeah, as a teen, I thought it looked shecky was the word I was describing it as. Kind of just like, can't be like Transylvania Twist or like Transylvania 65000 kind of like
That's a great
bumbling
movie.
comedy. And it's not at all.
all.
And so it's this smart, and I love the universe that it lives in because it lives in this pulp world, but it's set in modern day, which I guess is like 1980s.
90 at this point, yeah.
Yeah, 1990
89, 90.
Los Angeles.
Yep.
And it's still set as a pulp novel.
Yeah.
And the whole plot is that this woman starts reading this she works in a used bookstore and she starts reading this really obscure horror novel, and slowly it kind of starts coming to fruition, and then she realizes that the novel's about her. And
Jenny Wright, by the way, of Near Dark fame.
yeah, who is absolutely gorgeous,
Yeah.
yes, and just amazing in this film. And
Is she the one who is in the relationship with the young guy in Near Dark? The one who
Yeah,
does
she's
the
the
rope
main
thing with
girl.
him?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She did like a batch of movies around this time period, Madman, Young Guns 2, stuff like that, and then she just disappeared from the business.
Yeah.
But beautiful actress.
And this one, it's directed by Tibor Takis.
Yep.
Do I say that right? Takis?
That's, I think so.
Tibor Takis. We're
Yeah.
going with that because it rolls off the tongue like that.
Director of The Gate.
Yes, and
cool.
So it's got some of the same elements as The Gate, where it's got these like claymation creatures that play into it. But yeah, the whole thing, Elric, you're gonna love it because
Yeah.
it is so pulp and noir and Los Angeles.
It hasn't come out yet, though. You got an early copy?
I don't think it comes out.
Yeah,
till
it's, I think it's
early,
sometime in July.
Yeah, I think maybe
Maybe
late
I'll
July.
borrow your copy and watch it for next week.
You can't borrow
I've always
my
been
copy.
curious about it. I just thought it was the sequel to Madman, like the narrated from his perspective,
Madman.
the Rashomon of Madman sequels.
And actually, I could see that it's got some similarities to Darkman.
Oh, yeah,
but
Darkman.
Some mild similarities.
Just looked like it on the cover because
Yeah.
he looked like a
It's got
superhero
kind of
type.
killer.
Nor, okay.
Yeah, the
But
look
it's not
of the
that
killer.
at all. Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's really innovative, and I've never seen anything like it before. And I don't know. We were talking about this while I was watching it. That if you were to remake it, would it be as successful in today's audience? And I don't think so.
Well, the original wasn't successful either. So, that'd be a tough call. But
Yeah.
it's worth noting that the guy that plays the killer is Randall Cook, the makeup effects guy that did all that stop motion stuff for
Oh,
The
really?
Gate.
He's
that's
scary as
interesting.
shit in that movie.
Yeah, and he did all the stop motion stuff in I'm Madman as well. This was his first chance to kind of be in front of the camera as well as the killer character. That one comes out July 21st on Blu-ray. Just so you know.
Yeah. So people check out Madman from Scream Factory. Even if you kind of disregarded it in the 90s when it first came out, you should definitely check it out now. I think it aged well.
Yeah, cool little movie.
Yeah, because I have a feeling if I'd watched it in the 90s, I probably wouldn't have thought it was cool. Just because I thought I was cool. I wasn't. I was in high school. No one's cool in high school.
12.
I was like
were
early
12.
teens. But I probably would have been like, oh, this isn't scary. It's too, weird. But now watching it, it's great.
Right.
So.
Cool. Elric?
You know what I saw? I was in a hotel. I went to the Grand Canyon with little children.
That's right. You did.
Which in itself could have been a great setting for a horror film. I will say there was one funny moment. I'm taking a photo against the Grand Canyon with my wife and kids, and this guy with the big beard stands on the edge of the photo and won't pass. You know how that awkward. And I'm like, oh, you can go by. And he's like, no, it's fine. I was like, okay. And I left it, and we all noticed him. You know how sometimes you don't notice strangers, but we noticed them because of that.
Right.
And then later that day on Instagram, the exact photo I had taken kind of popped up on Instagram, and somebody we all know called Jackson Stewart linked some guy's name in, and the fucking dude with the beard takes this photo and says, "Our Kane's gonna be shocked when I go up to go to Jump Cut next." And he's like, "You're that weird dude with the beard from Grand Canyon."
Who is
it? So I think it's somebody like who listens to the show and who's at the fucking Grand Canyon. They XX because he's somebody in my Instagram feed. So
you got recognized at the Grand Canyon.
I don't know. He never said hi, so it was just really weird. That, and it was Jackson who picked it because he saw our 2 photos back to back. He's like, "Holy shit!" And this guy. So anyway, it was very weird.
That is totally.
But it was
bizarre.
funny that he didn't say anything. It was just super awkward that he wouldn't enter the photo. Anyway, so that was cool.
If he was on the show,
stalker.
please identify.
He was a good stalker. If he was a good bearded stalker. I like a hefty beard. I did watch Nonstop. The reason I'm saying is we were at the crappy hotel that you'd be at,
Neeson.
and I did see Liam Neeson's Nonstop. And I'm only mentioning it because the setup to this is very much a kind of one by one we knock them off 10 little Indians thing. And the setup's really fun. The payoff is like even more generic than the Taken movies. The last 10 minutes is just total garbage. But the setup of this guy who's the security, marshal on the flight.
Okay.
Where you are allowed a gun and you're allowed to be on there and you don't really know that's what he is. He just gets a text message saying, "I'm going to kill one person ever in 20 minutes if you don't put 120 million in my account." So he basically is then watching people get knocked off on a plane.
Wait,
so
but how is he getting texts on a plane?
He's getting texts because he's a marshal and they get through the marshal service. It's all legit. It's all been researched.
Because I'm ready to punch holes in this. How can you transfer money while you're on a plane?
Let me go backwards a second. It gets the first 3/4 gets 2 stars out of 4, and that's me saying it's really good. And then the last is 0 stars. So I'm going to move on from that. Anyway, I went to Etheria with you.
Oh yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to say big shout out to Stacy Piphamon and Heidi Honeyco, who's been on the show. That festival has taken leaps and bounds once it's become Etheria, because one of the problems of being a horror festival is back to back a lot of the films can become repetitive.
Right.
Since they've become Etheria, they only show 6 films 2 years in a row. First one was really good. This one was outstanding.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like it really was a high class festival with really strong work. And here's the big thing that you already know because you've seen our Twitter feeds. But for me personally, this has been a weird year with horror. Last year I saw so many good indie things. Like I was on fire with my top 10 was overflowing. Mm-hmm. So far this year I feel like I've probably only got 3 things on my top 10. Probably It Follows, Way Up High, Spring, somewhere in there. And now the short film called Slut by Chloe Okuno is easily number 2. If it had been a feature, I would have liked it even more than It Follows. Everything about the tone, the textures, the way it's put together, the assurance of the world, it's just phenomenal. And it's an AFI graduate film, which just blows my mind. And it reminds me of a time when film schools were really relevant, where a Scorsese or someone was coming out of film school, they'd make a short and they would go straight into a professional career. Nowadays, there's just too many film schools, too many short films coming out of film schools. This film stood up and said, "Oh my God," like the last frame of this film is my favorite frame of a movie this year. Like it's just gorgeous, and the mixture of like tones, and because it's not a horror fest anymore, what happened was, and that's part of the reason why the film worked on me so well, is if it was a horror fest, I would have known what the film was in 2 seconds. But halfway through this film, I was like, oh, this is going to be the kind of John Hughesy coming of age movie. Cool. It's not even a horror.
Welcome to the Doll's House.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. It felt like Welcome to. It's shot on film. It's shot on 35. It's meant to be Texas. It's this geeky girl who kind of looks at the local slut at the skate rink and kind of wants to be like her.
Right.
And then some young guy comes up to her and goes, "You don't want to be like that girl. Fuck her. You want to be you. You're cool."
Yeah.
And you realize it becomes a Little Red Riding Hood story, and you realize he's kind of the wolf. And as it goes, man, by the end of it, I just was like, man, I am so impressed. And I walked out of that festival wanting to make movies more than ever before.
Yeah.
Like, and that hasn't happened at their other festivals. This one I would left on an absolute cloud of, oh yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah, I can't remember who I was talking to about it. It might have been Sean Keller, but
He felt similar.
Somebody told me about the short.
Loves Slut.
And the thing that they loved about it was that it was that all the actors were real.
Yeah.
It wasn't
very grounded.
that CW super.
No.
It's like even the girl that's the hot girl. It's like, well, she's the hot girl in that town.
Exactly. She
She's
still
not the
was.
hot girl.
She was just kind of. She wasn't like Hollywood hot. She was just still kind of like, okay, she's
easy.
hot
She
girl.
looked easy more than she looked hot, and I like that.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, all the films are good. They all had different angles. That was the only one where it's like I hate that thing. Oh, you're sure it's good. You should turn it into a feature. I feel almost never like that. Yeah. This one I was like, no, you know what? Actually, that is kind of a perfect first feature if you found a way to flesh out the world. And she seems super humble and after, and, kind of surprised by the interest. Yeah. After she won the audience award, but not the best film.
Overall.
Went to a Spanish film that was also, a very good tension.
It had really good build.
It was a good film. Yeah. It was a professional seeming film. Anyway, I can't say enough about Etheria. And the reason I said to our crowd is because they will travel with this festival. So it will come to some of the towns that you all are listening to. I wanted to quickly talk about a couple TV shows.
Oh, hey, back to TV.
I finally listened. Get off my lawn, Hanley. Ken Hanley. A couple of you have told me to see Salem. I resisted because it just looks like the things I'm not that interested in.
It looked like a WB Witch show. I kept thinking it was Charmed, and it isn't.
And a period piece thing, which there's a certain period. I like things in the 70s, 80s. That period I'm all into. When it goes to like 1890s, not anything like that, I'm like, and the cool thing that Ken wrote to me, I think, and said, hey, just so you know, it actually is like fully Lovecraftian. There's actually creatures.
Yeah.
So I was thinking Scarlet Letter. So I watched one episode and I was like, I didn't completely love it yet. I'm 3 in.
Ken, by the way, runs the Fangoria website.
Yeah, Fangoria, but he's always giving us shit about being old.
Yes.
But it's really fun, and I'm starting to get into it. So the first 3 I like. I don't love it yet, but I'm totally like wanting to keep watching because of the practical monsters. They have these weird witch things and a weird creature or demon thing that's running around.
Cool.
So that's enough to get me into it. So I would tell our fans who are like us staying away from it for that reason.
It's on Netflix, you said?
It's all first season's totally there.
Oh, great.
I don't know about second season. Second season, I know Lucy Lawless joins the show, so
great.
I haven't seen that yet.
She's on Evil Dead as well.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot of good people in this. I recognize a lot of the actors. And I wanted to briefly talk about the artistry of Hannibal. 2 episodes in, and Vincenzo Natali directed the last episode.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Very little happens in it narratively, but it's just like
beautiful.
It's like it looks like big budget art house films of the 70s.
Oh yeah,
like it's like how the fuck did this get greenlit? And when you told me,
that's kind of the we're gonna have Neil Marshall on in 2 weeks,
right?
And he directed Hannibal, and he said he's like that's what Fuller told him is like you go as art house as you possibly can. Like they encourage that out of their directors.
It's just gorgeous. In this particular episode, even though there weren't a lot of revelations, it was much more about the mood and the feeling of between these characters as they're bringing a certain character back. I just couldn't even believe it. That was TV. I mean, I feel watching the final of Game of Thrones without any spoilers. Big things happen. Big things happen in the story of that, and the artistry of that's very high too. But Hannibal's much more the minutia of artistry. Like Game of Thrones, like the big picture, big scale. It's Spain. It's Scotland. Hannibal's more like, oh my God, we've recreated a chapel.
Yeah.
To a point where you're like, oh my God.
I still think it's the densest show. Like like you can't just watch one episode and be like, all right, I'm done with that. Like I feel like you need to go back.
I think the first season's a little harder for some people to start with, but once you get into that second season, it's stunning.
But on Game of Thrones, I will say, I've mentioned on the last show that I've been binge watching it, and within 2 weeks, I'm already up to midway through the 5th season. Like I'm almost at the season finale of the 5th season, just because I've been watching like 3 episodes a night. And I know I love watching it like this though, because it really is like it's like when I was a kid and I used to get excited over novels and I would stay up super late because I had to read the next chapter.
Right. Yeah.
It's like that for me, but in TV form.
It is. I think narratively it's the best in terms of wanting to come back to it.
I have
Hannibal's
to say,
more a different thing.
With Game of Thrones, where I dropped out of Walking Dead a couple of years ago because the zombie presentation of it started to bore me, Game of Thrones more than filled that void with the walkers just in the past couple of seasons.
You got an episode coming that's like the best thing on TV.
I know.
Wow.
I've got a message for all you Game of Thrones fans out there who've listened, and I will not spoil it by naming names, but all I'm going to say is not dead. Not dead, motherfuckers. Come back next season. He's not dead, and that's all I'm saying.
No,
so come back to that.
Don't be that guy.
I believe it.
I believe it.
I believe it. Anyway, you just wait till you catch up. You don't need to know yet.
You're
not there. You have 5 episodes.
It's okay. I'll be there by Thursday.
And final thoughts. I just have 5 things to tell you.
5?
They're very quick.
I've got movies too,
No, these aren't movies. Don't worry about it.
5 thoughts.
Father's Day is this Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm going to just tell you that these are the 5 films that this Sunday that you should be watching in order. You should watch It's Alive, Stepfather, Eraserhead, Creepshow, and Frailty. Good night.
Wow.
Those are the
Wow.
5. There's a lot of
Wow.
other good choices. Those 5 are the ones.
That's a good Father's Day.
That is your Father's Day
Marathon.
5 from
Texas
Elric.
Chainsaw. I
Father's
would put
Day
in
No, none
there.
of those. No, you would be wrong.
I would
It sucks to be subjectively wrong, but it
was
happens.
Creep Show, you said them really quickly. Was Creep Show in
It's
there?
Alive you start with because that is actually my number 1.
That's great.
For,
Yeah.
I mean, for a father, it's just unbelievable. Stepfather, which is fantastic. Razorhead.
Okay.
Creep Show, which
Okay,
has
it is in there.
daddy, and Frailty, which I think is a really
Great
neat-
movie.
I need to
Yeah.
watch it again. I haven't
Love
seen it in like 10
Frailty.
years, but I
That
remember
movie kind of messed me up when I first saw
solid.
it.
It's kind of disturbing in
Yeah.
the right way.
There's one really solid scare in there that I was like, whoa.
But I will
Fancy
add
coming.
one addition: the greatest Father's Day moment you could ever have in a movie, a Serbian film. I was a new dad when I just saw that moment. That is a beautiful
man.
moment.
That is wrong.
True love between
wrong.
father and
You're
son.
just wrong.
Okay,
right,
really,
moving
really,
on.
really quickly on my end, the few things I saw were number one, I kept getting pushed by a bunch of people online to watch this short film called Kung Fury, which is on YouTube.
I taped it.
Is this
taped
with
it.
David
You
Hasselhoff?
taped it.
It was on TCM. They played it the day it came out on TCM. Yeah, I
Really?
taped it. Yeah.
Holy smokes!
Is this the one
Before
with David
Dolomite.
Hasselhoff does the,
Yes,
the song to
yes,
it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's written, directed, and stars David Sandberg. And it's set in 1985. This tough martial arts guy that's a cop in Miami, and he goes back in time to fight Hitler. It's pretty ridiculous. I didn't think I would like it, but
Is it cool? It looks big budget.
It's like within the first 3 minutes, I just didn't understand what I was watching. It blew my mind in that way, where you're like, well, I don't want to turn it off, but I don't understand what I'm watching. I have to keep watching.
Okay.
So when he goes back in time and meets Thor and a woman that
meets
sends
Thor?
him, yeah, it's just yes, he meets
And
Thor,
this
the
was
guy-
crowdfunded, right?
It was a crowdfunded film, yes, and
But
then
a big
eventually,
budget crowdfunded thing,
yes,
right? Okay.
yes, and
How
it's
the fuck
about
did it get on TCM?
I don't know. It's about a half hour long, and it's very impressive. But it's on YouTube, so you can watch it. I queued it up on my TV and watched it that way. So
It
I really dug
definitely
it.
became like a meme is the only way I can describe
It
it.
was
Because
one of
people
those
were
things.
passing that David Hasselhoff video all over
Oh,
the
yeah.
place. And I kept getting people emailing it to me saying, hey, Fangoria, have you seen this? And people were really excited to
Isn't the
share
Hoff and
it. So.
Darren's next thing? In the next Devil's Carnival sequel?
He is.
I think
He
the Hoff
totally is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's singing.
That's true. He's just making a huge comeback.
You know, he was in Witchery. We should get him on the show.
Witchery. Oh, man.
Witchery. And
It might be time for
Piranha.
Hasselhoff.
He has one
you're
testicle
right.
that's really low compared to the other. I would just say I saw some bad high school movie in the 80s with him, and somehow he gets naked. He's in a basketball team. I can't even remember what the name of the movie. And there's just this one shot where I'm like, holy Jesus, how does that?
I'm
Anyway.
still
No,
saying.
speaking out of school, maybe a little.
The's a high school 80s movie with the
Hasselhoff
Hoff
is on a basketball
that
team.
shows his testicles.
That shows his testicles. Lopsided.
I'm IMD. Oh, wait. Our guest is already
Yeah,
here.
our
Everybody's
guests
gonna look
are
it
all
up.
about
Hey man,
Hasselhoff
that's the
testicles.
original Nick Fury right there, and
Hashtag.
and also really quickly, a few Scream Factory releases that I caught up on. Dog Soldiers is out on Blu-ray,
that one.
and I have to bring it up just because, I cannot. People are crazy online, crazy.
Oh, no, what'd they do?
People are complaining about the transfer to this, and it's like Neil Marshall, the writer director of this film. This is his approved transfer. It's, I don't think any previous U.S. release has been, I think they've tinted it a little darker or put some sort of blue tint on it or whatever. So he shot it in 16, blew it up to 35. So it's going to be grainy looking no matter what. But a good chunk of the first half is actually in the daylight, which doesn't appear that way in previous releases. But I watched it. I haven't seen it probably in a good, 10 years or whatever, since it came out on DVD originally. And I think it's a lot of fun. It's a really strong debut. It's a really fun werewolf movie.
Yeah, once they get werewolves, they're big.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean,
gosh, yeah.
and that's the other thing. It's like, I think people's complaints about the transfer, it's like, once they get in the house, which is, pretty soon into the movie, and it becomes kind of like the werewolf thing is irrelevant. It's like these soldiers are trapped in a house and something's trying to get in. It just happens to be werewolves. Once you get to that point, the film looks pristine and great. So, I don't know what the complaints online are about, but in terms of, this is the best the movie's ever looked, in my opinion. And I really like it. And in fact, they put a lot of fun stuff on it, including one of Neil's early short films.
Oh, cool. I've never seen his stuff
cool.
before.
It's kind of, it's called Combat. It's kind of fun to see some of his early work on there as well. So I thought that was pretty solid. And I also picked up...
Why do you all cry so much?
Rick, quit
that's the one
squeaking
thing-
your stupid chair.
Is it my chair?
It's your stupid
That's
chair.
not my
It's
chair.
a squeaky chair.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
We
it's-
found the 80s movie. It is
what's that?
called Revenge of the Cheerleaders.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
I've seen a
Hasselhoff's
film print
balls.
of that film,
It's got a lot of cheerleaders
and
on
there's
it.
some lopsided Hasselhoff.
Okay, we got to isolate the Hasselhoff testicles.
But yeah, when the Scream Factory guys
Thank
were
you.
here, I was kind of
Soon
surprised.
to be mentioned guest.
I always know people complain in little ways, but to complain, it's like biting the hand that feeds
Oh
you.
my
If somebody's
God.
willing to go out of their way to get you, transfer you a film that's beautiful, or you know, if you ran something called Friday Night Frights and you're showing actual films that people want to see on a screen, to then complain about said thing, except it is a little late at night. I do.
Yeah. No, I mean, but people are like going like, you know, stop buying their stuff.
Like Night of the Living Dead,
sort of
remember?
thing.
Well, for Twilight Time. You know, that
Oh,
Night of the Living
and it's
people
like,
had issues with the darkness.
You don't have to buy it if you don't like it, and if you don't like the way it looks, I don't know what to tell you. You know, that's the way the filmmaker wants it to look.
I think it's when the collector mentality gets out of control.
Yeah.
It's this. It's not even about the quality anymore. It's about the collecting of the quality. And it's not the same thing. You know, the work is still what's important here.
Yes. And stand by. We will bring them on momentarily.
I have the power. Seashell.
What does that even mean? I know it references
You'll see the
his
photo
shirt.
of our episode where I'm wearing a T-shirt which has He-Man holding a power shell from New Zealand.
What's a power?
It looks
power
like
shell
he's
is like
holding
a
the Death
muscle.
Star, seriously.
Wait, power or power?
P-A-U.
Power.
P-A-U. And it's called power shell. So some comedian in New Zealand thought it would be clever to make a He-Man shirt where he's holding a power
but
shell.
you're covering it. Let us see it. There we go. I have the power.
And so, for our 3 New Zealand listeners,
That was for you.
I just made your day, Jermaine
get that.
Clement. And I know you're listening,
Thanks for
motherfucker.
listening.
Jermaine, are you here? Good. Jermaine's here. Let's move on. Okay.
Holy smokes. All right. Well, this is going to be exciting. I want to call this episode Let's Get Animated.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do.
I have been asking for this topic for so long, and the guys took some serious convincing of this.
It's not a convincing. You know what? I want to.
I avoided this motherfucker like you would.
But I want to say perfect timing because let's introduce our guests. With us here is the co-creator and writer of Golan The Insatiable, which is on Fox right now.
It is.
Josh Miller, welcome.
Hello.
And Josh also hosts the Friday Night Frights at the Cinefamily, the old silent movie theater.
Very cool.
A lot of great events that...
they did Madman.
They did Madman.
Which we had the Madman that same week.
They also did The Gate.
The Gate,
Same director.
Psycho 2. A lot of great
also
screens
shown
here.
Possession 13 times.
Oh, yeah, I came to it there, yeah.
The Jewish one with the rabbis.
That one, not the one that you like. I wanted to share that. No. So Josh is, we all know him very well, and obviously we wanted to bring him in for this specific episode because we were going to talk about animation. But also,
the guy you know from the quote on our advertisement.
The quote on our advertising. He's probably name dropped more than any other person ever. Every other week we're like, yeah, Dick Grunert lent me this movie.
Yeah, Dick Grunert said I should watch
Oh, that's right. Last week I watched that. Yeah, that cell phone film.
So guess what? Dick Grunert is here.
But you know what Dick Grunert does? He's not just good with quotes about podcasts. He's also from Adventure Time.
Yes, he is a writer on Adventure Time, and he's done several horror shorts, including Scary Mask, House Call. What's the recent one? The Screaming, right?
The Screaming, yep.
There you go.
And The Trap coming up.
Yeah, so you should listen to this man.
And more importantly,
because
he's from
he blends us
Wisconsin.
movies.
Yeah.
And there aren't many interesting people from Wisconsin.
Wow.
Just kidding.
I'm from Minnesota.
Holy cow.
There was one day, the way that I first met Dick is I was at a screening at Jump Cut. And Dick is in front of me, and I don't know this guy or anything. And he turns around, and he just looks at me, and in his happy way, he goes, "I love your podcast." And I said, "Oh, thank you so much. Who are you?" And he introduced himself to me, and he was wearing awesome Fright Rag shirts. And then somehow he was like, "Yeah, I write for Adventure Time." And I was like, "Are you fucking serious? You write for Adventure Time?" 2 weeks later, I got a tour of the Adventure Time office.
Boom.
That's how badass Dick is.
He's awesome.
Yeah,
amazing.
same thing with me. And I was like, what's Adventure Time?
Yep.
And actually, he's the one that, many recommendations, but Elric and I have talked quite a bit about that movie, Found. A little bit to me, and Dick was the one that actually. Did you see it at a film festival? Is that how you initially saw it?
At Zedfest in Burbank.
Wow.
And you bought a DVD off the filmmaker.
No, I was at the screening, and it was in 2:00 in the afternoon, and there was 4 people in the theater. So the director gave us DVDs of the movie when it was over.
Oh, great!
Oh, wow.
That was
Wow.
cool.
So.
Well,
That's the great thing about
It
festivals.
worked because it got to us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wait, is that the one
awesome.
about the brothers?
Yeah, the brothers.
Well, I will say this: as much as I complain about Jump Cut being a hellhole for the business owner himself in terms of finances, it's people like Dick, and I wouldn't have met Dick without having this place, and we have become friends. And a lot of the connections he's made in this, especially the genre, like and filmmaking stuff, have come through there. So there's those kind of things, the benefits of having a place, meeting place. He's always been really kind about that, which is cool.
Well, I definitely want to delve into both of your horror history and stuff, but just right off the bat, I just got to say, like, I really do love Golan The Insatiable. It's really.
Have you seen the new episodes or just the old ones?
Well, here's the funny thing, because I have Hulu Plus and it's all on there, so. When I initially brought it up, it just said pilot. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, I'll watch the pilot. And I watched it, and I just fell in love with it right away, and then realized it's season 2, episode 1. Like, wait, how is this season 2 of the pilot?
On Hulu.
So then I went back and watched some of the older ones, but it seems like you know, dare I make this comparison, but it's like, you know, when The Simpsons were kind of on Tracy Ullman, and they were like trying to figure out, like, all right, I think this is how it's going to work. And then they finally got the confidence to start the first season. So I feel like at least season 2, and I mean, what is it, 3 episodes in now?
Yeah.
It just seems a lot more confident, and it knows what it wants to be, and it's really funny. And I mean, I just watched the most recent one about the Shame on P.
Yeah,
is what it's called. Golan is I just love the image of Golan running around with a shark in a bag of water.
Ultimate birthday present.
It was just amazing. So I mean, was that the intention? Like, you guys kicked it off, and then was season 2 meant to kind of reboot it, so to speak, or what? Why is season 2, episode 1 the pilot?
Convoluted story short, it started on it was called Fox ADHD. They Fox swiped one of the Adult Swim like Big Kahuna guys,
right?
Because they realized, well, maybe we don't need to spend $1.9 million per episode on an animated show,
right?
When like Archer and Aqua Teen Hunger Force, particularly good example of that one, big hit show, could pretty much animate it yourself if you knew how to do it.
Yeah, there wasn't too much to that, but I loved it. I can recite most of the episodes.
So Fox ADHD was going to do these 15-minute block shows. It was an hour of it. The idea was there was just going to be stuff coming in and out, almost like a longer form liquid television, which you remember.
Which is brilliant.
Spawned Beavis and Butthead.
Flux was part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
The Max was part of that. Brothers Grunert, And
I think that was what Fox's idea was, is like, oh, well, maybe that's a way to find our Beavis and Butthead, a new Simpsons or whatever. That it sort of failed on Fox. It's still technically on, but they didn't make a lot of new shows. Now it's on FXX. But our show, they got bumped up to a half hour that was supposed to be late night. And then Fox, Big Fox, was like, no, wait, we want to put it on prime time. So even though it was our 6 episodes were called a pilot season, we never made a pilot by itself. Wrote a pilot, and then they're like, well, it takes a lot of work to animate something. It's not like just bringing actors in. If we're going to do 1 episode, let's do 6. I know there's a lot of fans of the original season are very unhappy with some changes we made, but they should know Fox viewed that as a pilot.
Right.
So in their mind, it was like, well, now it's going prime time. It's going to be a bigger audience. Not to say they didn't care about the people who watched it before. That's just not how they viewed it.
Right.
So it's technically the first season. Now it's on the second season, but really the first season was just like a pilot. It's like Seinfeld without Elaine, or Kramer's called Kessler, or whatever his name was.
Right. Because the first season, if how many is it? 6? Because they're like, what are they, like 10 to 15 minutes?
Yeah, they're 11 minutes long.
So they're very short for the first season, but now the second season is a 22-minute legit, regular show. So, but no, I think everything about it got a lot stronger. Not to discredit the first season or fans of it, but season 2 is off to a really great start.
Animation,
and it's a lot of fun.
One undeniable thing is the animation is way better. Even the people who don't like the changes, like, oh, but it looks great now. The craziest thing is that we all thought we were going to get watered down, and the show was actually darker and more offensive than it was season 1. I don't even know how that happened. It was like they accidentally gave a note that pushed us in that direction, and we were like, wow.
Well, awesome. And I'm always curious about this, and this is a good question for both of you and Dick, is just, when you're trying to write narrative, either a television show or just, a narrative film, you are always considering things like budget and how can we pull this off or whatever. But it's like, sky's the limit with your imagination when it comes to animation. So, I mean, is there any limit in terms of like how far you can go in terms of how dark your humor is or whatever? Or like, do you guys just throw every wacky idea at the wall and figure out, all right, I think we could shape this into a kind of funny episode?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like season 1 was definitely how dark can we make it, and then we kind of got pushback, oddly enough, not from Fox, because Fox wasn't really involved in season 1, but just kind of internally from the company. And then once we were answering to Fox in season 2, they seemed to really want it to be. I don't know if they were just thinking like, well, Family Guy is offensive in its own ways. Maybe this will be offensive in this way. And I don't have no idea.
Yeah, Dick, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because Adventure Time, though kind of marketed as a kid's show, there's a lot of adult humor in that.
Yeah. It's, I mean, the demo is boys 6 to 11, I think, but college students love it. I get stopped by adults all the time who love the show. What's interesting, to answer your question, Adventure Time is this huge show that takes place in this fantasy universe, and they can go to all these different places, and that's great, but it could kill the designers, who have to draw everything.
Yeah, that's true.
So every once in a while, you might see an episode where they never leave the treehouse. That's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, I guess I never think of it that way. I'm always like, oh yeah, you can jump all around in a cartoon, but you can't because somebody has to sit there and draw everywhere.
25 people, designers in-house who draw everything, and then that gets sent over to Korea.
What's the turnaround for that, like for an episode?
For an 11-minute episode of Adventure Time, it's 9 months of production.
Wow.
From when
gosh.
we write the outline to when we finish post. It's like 9 months to a year.
And what about on Golan? I mean,
season 1 was radically shorter than that. Season 2, it was inherently longer. Like even if we did another season, it would just be longer than that. But it was also more complicated because we really hit the ceiling of what we could do at ADHD because they were simultaneously doing other shows. Part of the whole idea of the company was that it was kind of a way for newer people to start out. So we ended up moving over to another studio called Augenblick, where we really pushed the style of what we could do with it. And even though it's still Flash, technically it looks way more hand-drawn. Like, you guys are just hand-drawn. Yeah.
okay. And I didn't even realize that it was.
Yeah,
you can't tell. You can tell the first season because you'll have what I call dead face a lot, where it's like the character's face won't really move, but their head will kind of bop around and their mouth will go like that. And would you say Adventure Time is like board driven? Would you describe it?
Yeah, we don't write
Do you want to maybe
scripts.
explain for them and anyone listening what that means?
Yeah. So for our show and most of the Cartoon Network shows, they're not scripted. We have a writing staff that we write 3-page outlines that go to a board team of usually 2 people, and they write and storyboard the episode.
Really?
So
Wow.
Yeah,
that is like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like especially with animation where things seem even more storyboarded and more specific.
Yep.
Wow.
So the writers get story by credit, and then it's written and storyboarded by the board team.
The illustrators. Essentially.
Yes.
But they're writers too.
Yes.
Wow.
So to be a writer in that world,
I
you
don't
have
do
to also be
anything.
able to draw. No, not you, but the next team. So when you have those illustrators also have to be writers.
Yes.
So hear
That's
that, people
interesting.
who always dreamed of writing a cartoon, you also have to be able to draw that cartoon.
You gotta go into adult cartoons because we write it like you would a live action show.
Yeah.
Like it's a more drawn out process, which is great because obviously, as anyone who shot a live action thing knows, the moment you say cut, you move on to the next setup. All of a sudden, you're like, shit, I didn't get that.
I should have gotten that.
And even worse is once you're in the editing room and you're like, well, how can I cheat this and get some ADR behind this? Animation can kind of keep going back. But other than that, we function like a normal live action show where it's a big room of people. You come up with an idea. You kind of arbitrarily decide sometimes who's going to write it, which is the weird. Normally, really every show should say written by and then like 10 people. But just with guild rules, the way it works is Rob, you'll take this one. You do the first draft, which is in some ways a thankless task because you put a lot of work in it and you bring it back and it's like, this turned out great. Now let's pull it apart and rewrite every line until we make it as funny as possible. And then you get storyboards of that.
But you record first.
Sorry,
and
you record that.
The storyboard
re-edit
artist
it.
Use the recording to help board it.
Yeah, and we can keep going back and
We're the
adding new
opposite.
lines and stuff. Pretty
Wait,
much all
you guys animate first and then you record the audio?
They board it, and then we record the storyboard. So we're the opposite of what they do on like primetime shows.
But in a sense, like it's not different than a narrative film in the sense that like when you're recording the actors' voices, you only get that shot at it. So if you lose that, you're still.
But we can
out,
keep
right?
bringing them back.
Yeah, we bring
Okay.
it back all the time.
Okay.
And especially in
There you go.
season 1, I was the voice of Golan, which meant that would just change daily.
Give us your Golan voice.
Yeah,
Dylan!
That's pretty good.
And now it's Rob Riggle,
Oh, yeah.
and he's
Yeah, he's
busier
great. He's
than
funny.
me. So that's a little bit more like, no, you kind of got to plan.
You got to get the wriggle.
Bundle all the changes together and wait till he's back.
And what about some of the other voice talent? I mean, because I thought I saw Audrey Plaza's one of the voices.
She's the new Dylan, the little girl.
Yeah, that's kind of rad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is it people you've worked with previously in other capacities, or did you guys cast this?
Writing-wise, yes. Acting-wise, not really. I mean, my writing partner did a couple voices, season 1, like that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But the funny thing is there really weren't a lot of characters. We didn't do it Simpsons style where we were going to get 1 or 2 guys or ladies who do everything.
Right.
But we still had such a small set of characters. And like I did 2 characters. Maria Bamford can do 80. I guess she's our like Harry Shearer ringer. Although now season 2 we also
not
have
anymore.
Yeah. We also have John DiMaggio and he's great. So maybe he can do Maria Bamford
I love
impression.
that guy.
Where did the series come from? Like who created? Where did the idea?
Well, technically, I'm the creator, not co-creator. I didn't.
Sorry.
That doesn't matter because we have 2 developers on it, and the way credits work, like I feel we all created the show,
Right.
But credit-wise, the way that works is I had done. Do you guys know the website Something Awful?
Yeah, I think
They had a sort of famous message board that spawned Slender Man, who now inspires children to kill their friends.
Yeah, which is valid.
Yeah.
Too many kids.
And I would do a column for them every month, and I had kind of 2 long-running ones, one of which was Golan, and I just kind of had it went on long enough that I'd kind of thought about like, oh, that could be a show, even though its format was very different from a show. But I kind of got the opportunity when ADHD was starting, and that they were looking for people who weren't necessarily like I wrote for Friends or Big Bang Theory, and now I'm moving on. It was kind of like who are weird people who maybe haven't gotten a chance to sell their show because its idea is too weird, and then. Dave Jesser and Matt Silverstein, who are our 2 executive producers, they were kind of overseeing a lot of ADHD shows like Axe Cop and stuff, if you guys are familiar with any of that. And so then they helped me develop it from that point. But yeah, for like 2 or 3 years, I was doing an ongoing series for Something Awful.
Now, Dick, could you talk a little bit about your guys' voiceover talent that you bring in? Because I'm always shocked when I'm listening to an episode and I'm like, was that David Lynch? And I mean,
no, we've tried to get David Lynch.
No, but you had a character named the Lynch, right?
The Lich.
The Lich,
which is Ron Perlman.
But
Amazing.
I swear there were so many things in that episode that I was like, this is total David Lynch hints.
Yeah,
hints.
I mean, we kind of go there all the time because, especially Penn, the creator, huge David Lynch fan. We're all kind of into the whole genre stuff, so everybody kind of throws in those ideas. But we've had Eric Estrada and George Takei.
I love that you led with Estrada. Everyone who could have pulled out.
Yes,
Mr. Chips himself.
Yes.
Good move.
Thank you.
Who's your favorite person that you've had on so far? The one that you were like, holy shit, we got blank.
Oh,
Is it Eric Estrada?
It is Eric Estrada.
Obviously.
Can you have some Rowdy Piper?
We did an episode
Lead with that next time, please.
Sorry.
Can we recount that? All right, we're doing take 2. Who did you ever have on the voice talent of your show?
We did an episode. Keith David does a regular character, the Flame King, and we had Roddy Piper play a guy who comes in to try to take over the throne. And there's this whole scene that takes place. They're just fighting in the background for like 5 minutes, like they live.
That would be an understatement. 5 minutes is an understatement.
It was amazing. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Who does the voice of Lemon Grab?
Justin Roiland.
Okay, I love it.
Oh, he's the Rick and Morty.
Yeah, Rick and Morty.
Oh,
yeah.
which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah,
I finally convinced Rob to watch that show.
Oh, God, I love it so
and
much.
Yeah, he's texting me. He's like, this show's great. I'm like, I told you so.
Well, I mean, that's, that brings up another, because, on Rick and Morty, I think their second episode, they did like this amazing, like Freddy Krueger spoof.
Yeah.
But, obviously you guys are big genre fans, big movie fans in general. I've talked to both of you guys, and it's like, how often, how much do your influences and the things you like come into it? And is there ever any concern about, like, can we get away with making that Joker reference? Or
Let's
like
point
that?
out one's wearing a Creepshow shirt and the other's a Miskatonic University. So we're not fucking around.
They both come to horror trivia.
Horror trivia.
Yeah. So what in terms of your influences and things you guys love in movies and genre stuff, like, is it tough to kind of sneak that stuff in, or?
For me, it's easy because our 2 EPs are not horror movie guys.
So they don't know.
Like I think I even told them, but they didn't care in that sense. There's like a straight up just Pinhead line in the first season of Golan, where I was, because in my mind, there's a little bit of a Lovecraftian Clive Barker nature to him and just the way he would talk. And so I was like, he'd say like a Pinhead line if he's trying to threaten a little girl.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, even like in the Shame Monster in the room, we were trying to decide what he should look like. I was like, well, he should either be like Night on Bald Mountain or like Tim Curry's character from Fern Gully, the weird like oil smoke monster that comes out. So it kind of became like half and half.
Nice.
So at least for our show, it's an easy way almost to be lazy to some extent. We're just like, it could be like this. Yay.
Approved.
Yeah.
And we don't do anything we can't get away with anything too on the nose just
Right.
because of the show.
Legal stuff.
Well, that, but
Okay.
just the show itself takes place in this world where we try to create everything that happens
Yeah,
in that
it
world.
doesn't really, it subvertedly references
Yes,
things, but it never comes out and is like that episode of Scooby Doo or
Right.
anything like
The only
that.
time
Yeah.
we've ever done anything that was specific was the Ice King sings the theme to Cheers. Which, that was the episode that won the Annie and was nominated for an Emmy. And so, we're kind of hinting at the world that they're in might be part of our world as well.
And it's so sweet for the Ice King to sing that because he's always alone except for this penguin named Gunther.
Yeah.
It's the sweetest thing. I'm getting a
She
sentimental
really
now.
watches
Oh my
it.
God.
I
She wasn't just kissing her ass.
I love it.
That's for real.
Amazing.
I was just kissing your ass, but
Well, let's go back because we always love to hear about how people get into the genre and stuff. And obviously, I've known Dick for a while, but I don't know this story. But for both Dick and Josh, what because now you host these great horror screenings. So what was your introduction into that world? I mean, for most of us, we grew up in the video generation, so it was just going to a video store. But first horror recollections and getting into the genre.
My parents say that we got our first VCR because I wouldn't go to preschool because I would miss Scooby Doo. I have no memory of that. My first real memory was going to the public library, and I guess this is dating myself for anyone who does remember it, but there was a series of monster books that had orange colors. I don't remember this guy's name from then. I looked it up years later. His name was Ian Thorne, and there was like one on Dracula, one on the Wolfman.
Googling them right now.
Ian Thorne, Orange Monster Books. And it was kind of seeing those, and then I remember some like woman saw me reading them, and was like, we have all those movies. And I'm guessing they were VHS. I don't remember. It was just that I'm sure I could rent them and take them home.
Yeah.
But you could also just put them in these machines and sit there with big, ear things even bigger than these in front of like a crappy little thing. And that was how I saw all the original Universal monster movies. I remember I saw Attack of Killer Tomatoes, which really confused me because I didn't know it was supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
But I wasn't scared, so I was just like, I don't know what this is.
the title is so scary.
Yeah.
But that was pretty much it. So that kind of just started. I liked monsters, and then
Wow, these books look
Yoda would be displeased with this about libraries. I think Yoda wants you to go to the library to read, and here you are.
I read the monster books first.
Check
Yeah.
these books out. They look pretty badass.
Yeah.
There's one for
I
like
definitely didn't see that.
And they're definitely
Mad
aimed at
scientists.
kids too, so
Yeah,
like it
yeah.
wasn't even like I was just looking at pictures and not
Right.
understand. Because you read them, I bought one off eBay and reading it now, it's like I just stopped. It's kind of like an I can read
It's a kid book, yeah.
sort of book. But that was pretty much it, just off and running. And then at that, but this is when I'm like 5, 6.
Right.
So then at some point I age appropriately spilled over into just the horror movies that were happening. I think Friday the 13th Part 7 was the first of that series I saw, which I immediately became obsessed with and
Yeah,
just
I love
like
it.
worked back and saw all out of order. I remember I got nightmares from the TV ad for Aliens, like haunted me forever.
I got nightmares from the TV ad for It's Alive because it showed that
Ah.
spinning crib
Yeah.
with the claw. That shit fucked me up.
Wow.
When did you then take from there to wanting to show movies?
Well, I started making my own movies because I didn't know showing movies that didn't really happen in
Right.
Bloomington, Minnesota. And then it was kind of when there was a theater downtown where my college was called the Oak Street Cinema, which isn't there anymore. And I remember they would show old movies, kind of New Bev style, where they would do double features. And they had a big book that you could write in suggestions. And every time my friend John and I would go in there, we didn't understand how 3D worked, that you have to have a big expensive projector. But we were always like, Friday the 13th, Part 3, Jaws 3D. Like every time we went in, we're like, why do they never listen to us?
I want that double bill, man.
Yeah.
And not to segue, but I will say my friend John, who's like a hardcore kind of tech nerd collector, he loves video disc, if anyone remembers
Oh, God, yeah.
the beta VHS contender that lost immediately. like builds those machines now just so he can watch those movies. But he got from Japan in the 90s this weird 3D machine.
Oh God!
Where like your glasses were connected by a cord to this like weird player that looked kind of like a Sega Genesis or something.
Oh my God!
And he got
totally
Jaws 3D and Friday the 13th Part 3.
This is the only legit way to watch Friday the 13th in 3D at home. I've looked it up. Trust me.
Yeah, we're gonna have to build a machine
the
from
DVD
Japan.
and Blu-ray is like this, like the stupid red and blue thing. But if you get this format or whatever, you can watch it the legit 3D way. Yeah.
But then,
what does it look like though?
eBay sales sword time.
Because I remember when we used to see 3D on our regular TV with like the red and blue glasses, it kind of sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, is this like any better?
it wasn't as good as when I finally, once I lived out here in the glory of LA, saw Part 3 in proper 3D at like the Chinese or something.
Right.
So it wasn't like as good as that because it was still off like my friend's crappy TV, but it was pretty good. Like it didn't have the red blue problem, which to a certain extent you realize is like barely 3D.
Yeah.
So it looked pretty good, especially in the 90s when the idea of 3D at home boggled my mind. But to skip ahead to the showing movies, then when I was out here and just seeing the new Beverly, Cinefamily had just started then. And I was just like, it just seems fun. It's fun to suggest movies to people, just your friends, like, oh, you should check out that. And that was just kind of a way to do it on a bigger level. And then when I got the chance, kind of offered to me randomly to do it at Cinefamily, I was just like, yes. That was a real Ghostbusters, like if someone asks you are a god, you say yes.
What was the first film you showed?
Technically, we did kind of like a cheap sneak in where it was already happening, but just so we could fake present it to announce it was coming, was Rare Exports. And then the first one, like we chose ourselves, was Tucker and Dale, and this was during that weird nebulous phase where it was at every festival, and guys like you would be like, "It's the best movie ever," and no normal person had seen it. So like that felt like a good way.
Yeah, it took forever
to kick it off. Yeah, it was like 2 years or something.
Yeah. So what? So you were already attending, the screenings over there when you got the opportunity to start hosting?
I started volunteering because I was attending a lot at the new Bev. I look back and I'm like, this is my I have a sad movie addiction moment. Was my friend lived right next to the Washington Monument Mall in DC, and Obama had been elected, and he's like, you should come visit me for the inauguration. I'm like, that sounds awesome. And then I found out that Phil Blankenship was showing an all-day swords and sorcery marathon. And I was like, I don't think I can do it. I need to see Barbarian Queen on the big screen.
Is on your
I
side.
have Barbarian Queen 2 on VHS tape. Yeah, it's cool.
Phil does that. I moved to town because there was a Dolph Lundgren festival at
which
New Beverly.
I also killed a whole day.
Yeah, I gotta live here.
Well, right now,
marathon kicked off a couple of years ago. I don't think I left Cinefamily for
the one that's
4
right
days.
now, that the Egyptian and the Arrow is the fantasy, 80s fantasy stuff that Grant's program, and it's so
Return
good.
to Oz and
Everything.
Company of Wolves.
Company of Wolves, but they've got Dragon Slayer and Lady Hawk.
Beastmaster
They have
is right now.
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah,
tomorrow night,
it's
right.
what we have
because
portrait
I
trivia.
missed
And
freaking trivia.
I almost was this close to going, you know what, I want to see Beastmaster.
To that point, I like to think my priorities are a little better in place. I'm doing a thing it's called Series Fest. It's like a first year TV festival they're hosting in Denver. And they it was kind of last minute. They asked me, and I'd already been planning to see Beastmaster. And what's following it?
Sword and the
It's one I didn't
Sword and
know.
the Sorcerer.
Yeah, that's it.
Sword and Sorcerer.
And I kind of had that moment where I was like, but I wanted to go see that. I was like, no, Josh, no, it's more important.
But Last Unicorn.
Wait, they're showing
Last Unicorn's on
That
Friday.
is on my list.
No, man, there's some
super
good-
scary. Oh shit, it's on Friday.
I'm a big Dragon
gonna have to
Slayer
go.
fan, and I haven't seen it since I was probably 8.
Yeah.
But in my
It'd be
mind,
fun
I
to
love
see it
it.
on the big screen.
I'd love to see it.
We
again. I think I
showed
will.
that. I didn't show it, but Cinefamily showed it, and they had Phil Tippett in talking
cool.
about it, and that was pretty groovy.
Last Unicorn, which I don't know if you guys have seen because I don't want to call
Yeah,
it.
I've seen it.
Okay, because a lot of guys that I've met now who are in their 20s and 30s were like, I didn't watch that when I was a kid. It was like what the girls watched and geeked out to on the playground. But the soundtrack is awesome, and that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid because it's got harpies in it and the red bulls, which are trying to trap the unicorns. Harpies.
Oh, okay.
Harpies.
I heard something completely different.
It's got herpes in it. And
That's why it's the Last Unicorn.
Now we know who killed
Isolated
the
unicorn.
unicorns.
It follows Unicorn, the sequel.
It's okay. One in 6 unicorns have herpes.
They can have sex as long as it's not during outbreaks.
Okay,
It's
making sure.
Now
Okay.
we're specific. But yeah, so Last Unicorn, and it also had like a talking skeleton who guarded a clock that you had to walk through. It was like this big mystery. But yeah, it's amazing. And it was so kind of old school fantasy with all of this like horrible swordplay and blood and stuff in it that it rocked when I was a kid.
Well, it seems like we can answer why do we all go back to the 80s for our horror fixes, and the answer isn't horror. The answer is everything around it: animation, from cartoons to fantasy films. Everything was imbued with imagination.
Yeah, that's how
budgets where you could achieve your imaginations. I mean, even one of the ones I always remember, my science project. That it's probably a bunch of trash now, but as a kid, I sort of I wanted to watch it all the time, and I think back to it and go, now if that was made, it'd be shot on a fucking piece of shit camera, and it wouldn't have the same fantasy element, and you wouldn't want to watch it again.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't have Dennis Hopper, and it wouldn't have all these things. And then I look back and go, man, that was a weird time in not just horror filmmaking, but the stuff that periphery that enhances it.
When I was in Phoenix, I did a panel where I had talked about the theory that I've talked about on the show before, my Prometheus theory. The reason that I love Prometheus is because now all horror movies about horror are coming here, but in Prometheus we actually went somewhere else. It was kind of interesting. Yeah. And that's what we did in the 80s. It was all about going places. And someone who was on the panel with me when I was talking about that said that it was all because of the advent of computers in the 1980s, that suddenly we had this kind of like robotics and possible artificial intelligence and other things. And because we'd and NASA, and we'd opened
That's bullshit. It was cocaine.
It was cocaine.
It's fucking executives snorting cocaine.
RoboCop. Success.
That's RoboCop 2.
But because we had opened up this kind of scientific black hole that we were suddenly discovering.
Maybe.
No, but
fantasy.
that had opened up our imagination. That was what was fueling it. Was that we suddenly have broken through this wall of we don't know how to do things, but now we have this entire set of knowledge that we've never had before, and it fueled everything. It fueled fantasy. It fueled science fiction. It fueled the effects that we were doing. It pushed our minds other places, and I love that theory. So
yeah,
well, and I mean, this is the weird politics stuff, but there was an American exceptionalism that America was like the leading of everything, right? And then I remember when as a foreigner,
we aren't.
No, as a somewhat outsider, I remember when 9/11 happened and George Bush took it. I remember there was this weird anti-intellectual, like anyone who was trying to do anything that was above the other people were shot down. Like, oh, you have to be down here. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't think that's a good sign. Like when we start going there, and I feel like that actually reflects in the movies, reflects in the art, reflects in literature of that time period of like, no, we freedom fries, not French fries. I mean, that's to me, that's like it's disturbing. I always feel like when America's leading, to me, like the people who should be leading, Drew Daywalt's Day the Crayons Quit should be the flag we're waving, because they're like, holy shit, this little book, fucking #1 for 50-something weeks.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like anti-American talk to me.
And that's true too.
Let's hear from Dick. What about you? How did you? Because I've always known you. It's funny. Like it took forever before I knew you had anything to do with Adventure Time. I knew you as a genre guy. Right. At all these screenings. What was your first kind of genre introduction?
I come from a family of movie buffs in Wisconsin. My family, and it was a small family. It was me and my mom and my dad and my aunt and my grandparents. Mm-hmm. And all of them were into film. My grandfather had a used bookstore out of his basement. So, a lot of movie magazines and Fangorias and Starlogs and all that stuff.
What about Ian Thorne's Orange Monster books?
Yeah, probably. Doesn't ring a bell, but he probably had it. So when I was really young, my parents would go to the drive-in every Saturday night. And it was for the triple feature horror films. And typically, I think I would fall asleep in the back seat. But I remember seeing Friday the 13th when I was 6. Mm-hmm. So when it first came out, and it scared the shit out of me. I saw Last House on the Left. And asked my parents.
You right there.
You did not.
And asked my parents, why did that woman bite off that guy's pee-pee?
Well,
so I learned a lot.
This explains your answer was cuz.
They're like, were you paying attention?
He totally deserved it.
Right. I saw all these movies when I was that young, and it just kind of seeped into me. And we had one of those disc.
video disc?
Yeah.
Video discs.
And my dad had Fulci Zombie. And
Oh,
I
man.
mean,
Do you remember which one of those early ones gave you nightmares, or gave you the one you thought about all the time? Like, was there an image or a movie that you kept thinking about?
So,
like, I thought about the one you're wearing, for instance, Creepshow.
right.
Creepshow.
There was, my dad would also watch movies like after I went to bed, and I remember my door would be open and I would hear the movies. And he was watching, well, it was called Gates of Hell then, but it's City of the Living Dead. And it scared the shit out of me. And then, but I had to like sit up and I could kind of see the TV through the door.
There's some awful imagery in that.
Well, in the very end, when the kid is running toward them and the screen cracks and shatters, I like screamed in my room, and my parents were probably like, "Oh, he saw it."
Damn it.
I don't know how old I was, but that like screwed me up for a long time.
It's interesting because my kid right now, he doesn't want to see. So you always say things like, "Oh, I wonder when you should show your kids."
Yeah,
stuff.
and I mean that's a
My
big
kid
debate
doesn't
about the
want
animation
to
stuff.
see it.
Wow.
Like he says, that's too scary for me right now. Maybe when I'm I said, "Do you want to see Star Wars yet?" And he goes, "Maybe when I'm." He's 4, and he's like, "Maybe when I'm 6."
Really?
And I'm like, "Okay," because he just doesn't want to. He wants to
Marnie
stay innocent.
She's fascinated by it.
Yeah.
Like where she's like, we'll be watching Scooby Doo, which she absolutely loves, and she'll be like, "That monster's scary," and I'll say, "Do you want me to turn it off?" "No, he's scary." "Well, do you want it off?" "No." And so she
she's
wants
like
to
you,
keep
maybe.
watching. Yeah.
No, he's like trying to preserve his own innocence. I don't have to do anything. I'm just like, okay, cool. And I want him to be, as young as he can. Because for
you're
me,
letting him watch Paw Patrol.
I legitimately think and I think a lot of us, man, from most of the people we know, I got fucked up too early, and in a sense, it's
We turned
great.
out fine.
Yeah, you turned out fine,
Right?
but I gotta say, I was fucking scared of the dark for like 10 fucking years. Like,
I still am.
Yeah, I saw
I
the
still
box
sleep with the
monster
light
at
on,
5.
guys.
That was too early for me to have seen the box monster, the crate monster from Creepshow, because it gave me these recurring nightmares, and I didn't feel comfortable in the dark till being an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's only now, since having kids, to be honest, that I'm no longer scared of anything.
Are you kidding?
Weirdly,
I
no.
still
I'm
have
not.
a
I'm not really
nightlight.
not.
Like
no.
I still have a very bright night light that is at the edge of
That's
the
fine.
bed. That if I don't have that, if the nightlight goes off, shit, there's something wrong.
Yeah, but that's because they're coming for you. But the
know.
thing is,
Right.
they are coming for you. Like, I don't want to. Haven't you seen the nightmare? It's about you.
On the sound thing, I also have to have a white noise machine. Like I have an air filter going. If not, I have to have a fan. And when I travel to hotels, I have to have a white noise machine that I actually have an app on my phone.
Yep.
Because if it's too quiet, I hear shit. Like there's someone in the house.
Yeah.
There's someone outside. Like I
Have a
have
fan
to
or
block it
heater
out.
or something on at
Yeah.
all times because you never know.
I went through a phase too where I didn't want to see any horror, and like my dad would get Fangoria and he'd have to put it face down so I didn't see the cover.
What age is that? Like 10 or something?
Yeah,
25, 26.
Yeah, I think
Last
it was
year.
like it was probably like 8, 9, 10, right around there. And then I remember one day I was like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And he showed me Evil Dead. And
that's awesome.
that was it.
I think Evil Dead is a big hook for a lot of people because of the mixture of comedy and horror.
Well, I love the
And a
story
little
you
bit of
once
comedy.
told, and I think it was you, where somebody was watching Alien, and when the thing came out, of the
My
guy
best
said,
friend had
Were
to
you
turn
the
it.
one that?
No,
your best
my
friend
family didn't. Dude, one of my earliest
best friend had to
memories.
go in the
My mom
corner.
married my stepfather, and it was suddenly he had all these kids, and so we go. And so of course, the laws are all out. Once there's too many kids, no one's trying to police anything. So I'm probably like 7 or 8, and they're watching fucking Deliverance. And Deliverance is one of my earliest VHS memories. Alien and Deliverance are like the 2 early movies I remember. And Deliverance, I'm watching this, and I'm like the 7-year-old going, well, I don't know if I should be seeing this rape scene right now. Anyway, we watch it, but my best friend from down the road, Alex, who's probably listening to this, and his parents had very firm orders. He could go to our house to watch Alien on VHS as long as he stood in the corner and turned his back during the scene. That thing came in. And
Can you imagine you're 7 and it's like, all right, your best
tension,
friend,
yeah.
you have to go in the corner and not look
Just
at what's
during
about
that
to
scene.
happen. And
And
Alex is like, what the fuck?
And the cool thing is my parents made him do it. Like, so he's visiting our house. He stands in the corner, turns his back while we all watch the scene where the thing bursts out of your chest. And the rest of the movie, he's fine. Like, he was allowed
That's
to watch
gotta be
the
so much worse than
Exactly.
actually seeing it.
Exactly.
crazy.
So I have such a firm memory of like thinking this is really weird.
Yeah, kind of weird for you too.
Yeah, it's
right?
kind of
like
weird,
a
'cause I'm
David
getting-
Lynch moment.
Yeah, no one's telling me to go in the corner. Do they not care about me?
Yeah, I
But
want
yeah.
just a still frame of your family like watching it with anticipation and this small child.
Best of
off
all,
in
my
the
stepfather
corner.
was a minister. I watched every Friday the 13th movie with my minister stepfather. Every single one of them. And he would always go, ooh, help, ooh, every time somebody gets stabbed. I'll never forget. You know, those memories you have when you're young, you're like, this is so weird that this is okay to watch a horror film, to watch a thing where
I like
people are
to be
being pale.
scared.
Me
When
too.
I was little.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think I was listening to one of the podcasts recently, and I think you told a story. I was like, I did that, where you'd watch a scary movie on TV, and you sort of change
Flipping
the channel
really fast.
and like try to
miss the
trick
scare.
it, and like and I remember as a kid, I would like basically do the same thing with my fingers, as I would try to like see if I could miss the scare.
Mine was the remote because, like, my parents, we had one of the very first VHS players where you actually had to press the entire top
Yeah.
of the
Oh, yeah.
I
VHS
remember
machine
that, yeah.
down, and it was like the size of a microwave. And it was all fancy because it came with a remote control, but it was a tethered remote control, and it wasn't far enough away to reach the couch, so you had to sit on the floor. But I remember sitting there pausing it, and like I'd watch the scary scenes in like 2-second increments.
Yeah.
But it also
bring
kind
it
of
down.
it
Don't
upped
you
my
miss that,
ante.
though? Like, that's what I miss more than anything when I see a horror film, even one a year. If I get scared, and I guess this is where we kind of disagreed or whatever about It Follows here and there. But ultimately,
Again with that
this is
fucking movie.
this is what it did.
It follows.
If you get 3 beats in a movie, which makes you feel like a kid again, like where you get unnerved or scared, it's done its fucking job. Like, it fucking did it. It broke through all that shit that all the walls you've placed up about horror films. We watch them every week. We watch multiple to talk about them. I love that.
You know, to Josh, I mean, is that part of the thrill of hosting something of Friday Night Frights? Is that communal experience, and like some people might not have seen this movie. We got to get them in and get the scare.
My favorite thing was when people haven't seen it, and a lot of our guests, people who clearly have been going around the globe at like conventions and festivals, is like they kind of assume that everyone has seen it.
Yeah.
And I always think it's exciting to like tell them, like, well, when we go in, I'll ask how many people have seen it.
I like that you always start by asking.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like way less than half.
Yeah.
Like have actually
Did
seen
you do
it.
the Blob? I think
We did
you
The Blob.
Yeah, I went to that one, and I remember Jack couldn't believe, the director couldn't believe.
Chuck, yeah.
Chuck. He couldn't believe how many people like hadn't seen it.
That was like
Yeah.
one where hardly anyone had. It's like,
Yeah,
what?
it was so-
Because I
that
was
was
kind of
really
like,
good
what are you
screen.
even doing here? And I regretted not having time to tell the Madman guys when we showed that beforehand, because they kind of did the thing of like, no one wants to hear that story, and it's like, oh no, they don't know the story.
Yeah,
Go.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
a lot of these people are like 23, like
Yeah,
they
haven't even
have
heard of it.
no idea. But to hear that, showing it with an audience, I mean, on some level, I started doing it because my friends kind of aged out of wanting to watch horror movies, and I was like, was that like an age thing? Because we used to like rent like 4 horror movies and watch them all in one night in high
Yeah.
school. I get that you don't have time to do 4 movies in a row.
Right.
And some people are just like, I don't want to. I'll watch like The Babadook or like one horror movie a year.
Right,
Or
right.
now it's October and now I have an excuse to watch horror
Right.
movies. So it's really fun to like get people in to basically watch it with me.
Yeah.
And I always like when people actually get scared just because it's a midnight movie. So we try not to show stuff that'll make people fall asleep, which means you kind of err on a lot of 80s like fun horror movies.
Did you show Graduation Day?
We did.
How many did you lose?
Oh, no, it worked.
Okay.
No, that's the kind of movie,
Actually,
though.
that might work well with a crowd.
That's it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
movies where I don't necessarily, I'm like, that's not a great movie, but I'm like, I would want to see it as someone who just wants to see all of them.
Right.
And I feel our crowd's the same way. And if you're going to see it, watch it on the big screen. Don't watch it by yourself
Where
at
you
home
can
and
laugh
turn it
and
off.
have
Exactly.
fun with people. It's true. Like that one by myself, I was just like, oh.
Yeah.
But I could see if I'd
It
seen
might
it
have
with people.
worked, yeah.
And there's a lot of movies we decide not to show, unfortunately, because it's midnight, because we're just like, oh, it's good, but people will fall asleep. But I remember I fought for The Changeling. Because I'm like, it might work.
Just start at 10 o'clock.
good
What's the
one.
But I
problem?
remember there was 2 parts in the movies. I wish I could actually remember the exact moment since I'm bringing it up. But people went, ah!
Right.
This
Ooh.
Worth
It's a-
it.
that is, like,
35-year-old movie, or however old it is
one
at
of the
this
best,
point.
but it's one of the best.
It is.
ghost
It's
Yeah,
stories.
it is a
great.
good
It's
one.
like actually a scary movie.
Plus, George C. Scott is
Yeah.
great. at
Real
any hour
actors,
of
you
the
know, when
day.
real actors were in horror films, and they still are, you know, we got Insidious movie, Insidious 1, you know, 2 real actors who were stars, and Conjuring, it really works.
Yeah.
It's really great for the genre when we get real talent in there, I think.
Yeah. In terms of, because obviously because of where we are, a lot of people that work on these movies live here in LA, and I don't know, sometimes it's fun. I'll be sitting there and you'll bring up a guest of some sort and be like, oh my God, that person's in the movie. That's great. Have there been any, what are your personal favorites, memorable ones that you've hosted that have been like, oh man, it was so good to get those people together again?
Even though I know he probably will show up anytime it shows anywhere because he loves talking about it. I was just really happy because Jason Lives was always my favorite Friday the 13th movie when we had Tom in. And he brought the Jason Coffin from the movie, his buddy who dresses up as Jason, and we planned this whole thing at several points throughout the movie. The guy dressed as Jason would just like walk through the theater, and the great thing is we didn't quite plan it right, realizing that people are watching the movie. Like if you're in the center, you can't see in the dark. And so at first I was like, man, it's not working. But then he would just kind of like go up to like a one person on the side and realize like this one person would all of a sudden be like, oh my God, and Jason's standing right next to them. I was really proud when we did all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and you had to stay up all night to watch them.
Which I really wanted to go to that. I just knew I couldn't physically handle it.
I'll admit, I even fell asleep during part 5.
But it was great. Part 5 is the one.
I think part 5, I've had this discussion with John Skip. I don't hate Dream Child. I enjoy Dream Child.
No, I mean, my favorite story is I did a marathon of all of them with Lawrence Raffel from FearNet right before the remake came out. And, like, we started really early in the morning and went through it, and, like 5 started. And he just turned to me and he's like, I don't want to alarm you, but we're only 15 minutes into part 5. It's like, oh, my God. But yeah, that was bold.
Did you have guests for that, or was it just a straight?
We did. We had guests for part 3 because we were going to try to get a bunch. And I remember, even though he wasn't hosting the show, Phil Blankenship's been doing this for years, and he was just like, "You can't have guests." Like he said, you shouldn't have guests for any of them because it's already going to be really long. You have guests, it's going to go forever. But we'd already kind of been talking about doing, because we had Chuck in for the Blob, and he was even the one that was like, we should do Dream Warriors. Just let me know when you want to do it. I'll come in. And he could bring some of the cast in. So like, well, that'll just be fun. It's still, we started early enough that when 3 showed, people were still awake enough. And it felt like that added kind of a little something. And some of them are in 4, so they could kind of stick around and intro that a little bit. I did want to get Clue in for part 2, but again, we were trying not to have too many too early.
Well, I remember when I was in that movie. It's a good movie. Talented director.
Oh, the best thing about when we did the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, he wasn't a guest, but was when Quentin Tarantino reserved a couch, and he showed up because he wanted to see 5.
Yeah, I love 5.
And I was just like, that's amazing that he showed up specifically for that. And we were showing them in reverse.
Right, so 6, 5, and 4.
Yeah, not for any real reason. It was because we had...
That seems random.
It's because we were doing a big thing for 6, and we didn't want to bone it by that one being at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
But then Tarantino, since he was already there on a couch, just decided to stay for 4.
Did he stay on the couch alone?
He had a lady.
Right.
Blonde?
Not
that lady.
Not that lady.
Not the lady we all know.
But it was shortly after that, so clearly he was just like, replacement.
Forgery.
Oh, man. All right, so in terms of animation, this has been a fun assignment for me because it's like, I don't really know too many. I was trying to think back to like animated movies I grew up with, but there's not many. However, as I've mentioned on the show before, I'm a huge 3D junkie. Like I as soon as I got a 3D home set up, I'm obsessed with picking up 3D stuff. So at least in terms of recent stuff, I do own Frankenweenie, Coraline, Hotel Transylvania, which I like a lot. Adam Sandler's crew, Paranorman, Nightmare Before Christmas,
Monster House.
I got Monster House.
Monster House. I saw that in the theater in 3D, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it's really good.
I saw that one because it was when New York City had this awful blackout, and it was.
I remember.
Yeah, and it lasted for a really long time, and my AC wasn't working, but they got power back to Midtown, and so like everyone went on this max exodus to Midtown, and I was just sitting there, and I was like, "What the fuck do I do?" And so me and my roommate at the time went to see a couple of movies in a row, and after we'd seen a whole bunch of like adult movies, we were like, well, what's left? Well, let's fucking see Monster House. And it was wonderful. So
I like that one a lot.
Quit hitting me with Twizzlers, Dick. Jesus.
Love it.
But I mean, those are some of my favorites in terms of recent stuff. And at Bekah's recommendation, Netflix has the new Scooby Doo stuff. What's it? Mystery Incorporated?
Mystery Inc. is wonderful.
Is that the new show or is that a new movie?
It's the new show. The new movie, the new the new Scooby Doo Kiss movie. I think just came out.
Wait, Kiss? Like the band Kiss?
Like, and they play badasses in it.
No, there's 2 seasons of Mystery Incorporated.
There's only 2 seasons
on
existence.
Netflix.
It's sad,
and it's a lot of fun.
I've seen one episode of it that was mind-blowingly amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, because they reference all the old shows and kind of like discrediting some of the earlier cases, so to speak. But there's a lot of interesting, more modern horror references. So,
yeah, I mean,
really
the thing,
cool.
if you go back a bit, I mean, when we're watching Scrappy Doo, the superior of the series, I was a big Scrappy fan. I did like Scrappy Doo because I was a Scooby
didn't.
No, I did. I actually genuinely did. Who here is here because
That's
of Scooby Doo?
Don't.
Because I heard you and your voice. I'm literally here because of Scooby Doo.
Really?
Because the animation one didn't excite me to talk too much about it, and then I started looking at because I was thinking horror animation. But if I go back and look at TV shows that are just animated cartoons that happen to have horror themes occasionally, there's everything I loved growing up.
Yeah.
Everything
Mine too.
that made me who I am. But Scooby Doo more than anything was the show. It was my favorite show growing up. The Hanna-Barbera it was a brilliant show. And it was scary, but because they explained away the fear with every episode. No, it's not a ghost. It's this councilman who's trying to close jump cut, who's dressed in a bright green mask.
That guy you saw in one scene at the top of the episode.
Wait, you have a giant mantis running around.
We do have a giant mantis called my landlord, jump cut. But it was one of those shows like you kind of joked at the start that you wouldn't go to daycare. But I think I had a thing where we could only watch one show if we did our homework, little kids or whatever, and that was the one show for a couple of years. That was the show, and then Scrappy Doo. I didn't care that Scrappy Doo's a piece of shit. I'll watch Scrappy Doo. Who's the weird white black guy who's with him? The other dog, and I was always wondering what is that dog?
It was his country
like
bumpkin.
the
brother.
weird country bumpkin. Yeah, it was a weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange. But anyway,
I love the Scooby Doo ones where they had the stars on. So like the
Harlem Globetrotters.
Oh, yeah.
Phyllis Diller or Cass Elliot ran the Candy
wacky.
Factory.
Those were
Batman and Robin.
Is there a collection of all of the old classic Hanna-Barbera? Like a place to watch all of them?
They're on Amazon right now. They're I think it's like $1 an episode because Marnie will
that's
have.
a lot though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's like 20 episodes a season, it's like $20 for the season. Because Marnie will have breakdowns where she's like, no Scooby, and she gets really angry if I keep showing her, the hang gliding ghost over and over. So, or there's the cliff diving ghost and things like that. So I have to keep getting new episodes. But yeah, they have all of the celebrity ones too.
It's also weird for an actual DVD box set because it's we didn't know when we were a kid, but that started in the 60s. And then
69.
And then they'd be off for a while and they'd come back with a new name and a slightly different intro.
Got it all together for a brand new show.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I killed them.
Where'd you go?
I want to talk about we want to spend at least some of the end of the show talking about the snorks. And the thing is, as deep sea creatures, what the fuck were those freaky fucking things?
And he had
was that an offshoot of the thing or
the
what?
octopus dog named Aki. I think, it was like the Smurfs.
The Snorks was fucking weird, man. I watched that all the
Snorks.
time, and I was always like, what are they?
You know what I realized while I was researching today was that in the 80s, when I was watching Saturday morning cartoons, there were a lot of kids' TV show cartoons that were based off horror movies.
Yep.
Listen, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes was a cartoon.
Really?
Toxic Crusaders
Toxic Crusaders.
was a
That I
cartoon.
remember.
Addams Family, Ghostbusters, Beetlejuice,
Swamp
and the
Thing.
Tales from
Swamp
the Crypt
Thing.
cartoon. And
Yeah,
Swamp
Tales
Thing.
from the
Thing.
Crypt Keeper.
Yeah,
I
Tales
remember
from the
that.
Crypt
That was a
Keeper.
good one. Teen Wolf.
Yeah, Teen Wolf
I never
was a
saw that one,
cartoon. And there was a wrestling cartoon.
Oh,
So it was
Ghostbusters,
just-
the real Ghostbusters.
Yeah, the real Ghostbusters.
The real
But
Ghostbusters.
you know
I
what?
love that show. I had toys.
Even the not real Ghostbusters
With the
was
big
not
gorilla?
bad. Yeah, the one with the
Hey.
big gorilla.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wasn't horrible.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's the reason that
was
they
why they
became
had
the
to-
real
yeah.
Ghostbusters.
The real. What were some of the animated stuff that you guys remember growing up on or really being into?
I mean, definitely Scooby Doo. It's also kind of where do you draw the line of what's horror? Because it was easy to put monsters into kids' cartoons and not necessarily have it be scary.
Yeah.
But I felt just kind of anything that had any monster element, like
He-Man,
He-Man,
Yeah.
Beastmaster,
Thundercats.
Cool creatures in it,
Skeletor.
yeah.
And even the Bugs Bunny stuff, like my favorite Bugs Bunny character still to this day is that big red monster with the tennis shoes on.
Orange guy
They eventually said his name was Gossamer. I love him. He was just like a big red wall with tennis shoes.
No, and I was definitely always drawn. I mean, I liked all Looney Tunes and Disney stuff, but I'd be extra drawn to like that one, or there's like a one, I think it's Bugs, where there's like in a witch's castle, and there's a one with like the Dracula where every time Bugs turns around, he like turns into a bat. There's like a running gag. The Care Bears movies, oddly enough, is one of the things that gave me the worst nightmares when I was a little kid.
Is it the one with the face in the book?
Yeah, the face in the book.
So somebody a couple of weeks ago, and I can't say who, was pitching me this movie that they were they were like, it's written, it's gorgeous. And I swear it was like, it's about this guy and he makes a pact and he finds this book and it's this evil book and the book talks to him and there's this face that appears in the book. And I'm like, Care Bears movie too.
Yep.
Seen that.
You're pitching the Care Bears movie.
That's like, probably Orson Welles' voice too.
But like, I assume it was kind of the same way for you guys or anyone who likes horror movies, is that, you know, I couldn't quite process it at the time, but now looking back, it's like there'd be those kind of pivotal movies that would come out that my friends wouldn't like, and I just kind of wouldn't get it, because it's like, oh, we all love, you know, The Fox and the Hound, and, you know, Oliver and Company, and the Robin Hood cartoon, and The Secret of Nim. What? No, that movie's boring and weird. And I'm like, what? You guys don't love Secret of Nim?
Everyone loves
it's
Secret of Nim.
It's scary. And I'm like, yeah, it's fucking super scary.
Watership Down.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Watership Down, I
terrifying.
still can't watch. I will
Very
cry
depressing.
for weeks.
Yeah.
But
you guys, was Thundercats big
about
here?
the Scare Bears
Yeah,
movie.
big with me.
Thundercats was like huge in New Zealand.
big
I mean,
deal.
it came on
Thundercats.
some like
But what the fuck was
TV show.
Snarf? I mean, come on. Snarf.
Doesn't
I
matter.
don't know.
It was like a cat
Awesome.
lizard.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
They kind of Game of Thrones that show. I don't know how it played here, but you'd only get a few minutes of it each week, and it would be like a cliffhanger. And it was actually built less. It was like, you know, less resolve each week, so you had to tune in to the next one. Thundercats was the first episodic, I guess. I remember like that, and the other one, which is a big one for me. I don't know about here, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah.
You think about Final Destination 3. That is the start of Final Destination 3. Is Final Destination 3 the roller coaster one?
Yes.
That's how Dungeons and Dragons opens. They are on a roller coaster and it goes off the track, and then they're in an alternate dimension. Craig Perry should be making this film.
Yeah, I'll see it.
But I mean, I remember those things are very similar, so it definitely had horror, and that had some dark, bleak stuff in it where they would kill people, and but the characters were great, and so that's what the fantasy cross section comes in.
You know, I think it's funny how attracted we all are, everybody in this room, to, like, for me, it was like, look, I loved all the Mickey Mouse cartoons and Disney stuff, but if they did a Halloween themed episode, that was the thing that, like, that's my
Disney's
favorite episode
Halloween
they've ever done.
treat. I remember that special.
Yeah.
There's a Trick or Treating, Donald Duck, and Huey, Dewey, Louie one.
Were they
Favorite
the
episodes.
gorilla one? There was
Oh,
a-
yes,
the-
yeah.
And
And Legend of Sleepy Hollow, or whatever they called the Disney
Ichabod
one.
Crane. That one scared me
Yeah.
when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, that's when I remember kind of, you know, using that.
That's a
pause
good question.
button.
Which cartoon? Do you remember a cartoon that scared you as a young kid?
Ichabod
I mean,
Crane.
Disney, Fantasia, I think, disturbed me a little bit.
Yeah, Night on Bald Mountain.
I couldn't get my mind
Oh,
around
yeah.
what was going on. But Disney's Snow White is, you know, genuinely a creepy thing.
There's creepy
you know?
stuff in all that Disney stuff. Yeah.
Black
Disney-
Cauldron was one for
yeah,
me.
yeah.
I remember that scaring me
Although
when I
that
was
one,
a kid.
I don't know if it scared me so much as, like, because when you're like a kid and sometimes you're just weirded out by something that's different than you're used to. So, like, I remember rotoscoping, that had a lot of rotoscoping, and I was just kind of like, what is that? What am I looking at? But I thought Disney, as far as animation, because it's hard to be scary in animation. It's easy to be like, here's a monster. You like monsters, now it's fun. I feel like Disney with, like, the old Ichabod Crane one.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause they were good at kind of having spooky atmospheres, like something you can accomplish in animation and still have it be creepy.
Ichabod Crane holds up, though. I saw
Yeah,
that
I
again a
think so,
couple
too.
years ago.
You know,
great.
my parents used to have these VHS sets that they got me called Silly Symphonies, and they were just like combos of all of these different Disney shorts. And I remember that there was a Halloween one, and it had two really old Mickey Mouse cartoons, like really old ones, called Skeleton Dance, and the other one I think was called Mickey and the Haunted House. And a lot of it was just skeletons dancing, which was awesome. I loved him when I was a kid. But there's this one scene where this guy that's dressed as Death in a black cloak approaches Mickey and opens up his cloak, and it's like a skeleton inside. But I remember being terrified. It was because it was this slow build of it approaching him and then pulling the cloak up. And yeah, it was just
Sometimes cartoons. I guess this wasn't animated, but do you guys I don't know if you were Garfield fans.
Yes.
There was a book called like Garfield's 9 Lives or like the 9 Lives of Garfield.
The TV show that they did for that was
pirate
so
one.
scary.
Oh, did they
the
make a
pirate
TV
one,
show?
I love
the
the pirate
one
one.
is the Halloween one, and that one's terrifying.
Yeah, that one's
Because
great.
the pirate ghosts show up and like find him in a cupboard, and they chase him across the mountain. It's really across the lake, and it's
Yeah.
totally
I mean,
creepy. But they did do a TV show for the 9 Lives because it goes through like the girl who played piano and him in the Pharaoh times. And yeah, there's one where he's in an experiment lab.
That's what I was going to say, because at least in the book, I assume it's probably the same for the cartoon. It was all funny. And then there was like there's the one that's almost like the Plague Dogs, where it's like a cat being experimented on. He escapes and then like turns into a dog, and that's how it like gets away. And
It's
then
almost like a werewolf, if I remember from the cartoon.
And then there's another one where it's just like a house cat, and there's like some weird Lovecraftian entity that's like talking to it, and it talks the cat into like killing its elderly owner. And I was just like, what? And then it goes back to being funny, and as a kid.
Well, there was one other.
Yeah,
It was called Garfield's 9 Lives.
9 Lives.
And then there was another one in there where it was about this woman who got this cat when she was like young, and she played piano, and it went through the whole cat, and it loved her piano playing, and it would sit there, and then it died on the piano, and now she's an elderly woman telling the story to another cat, and you're just like, this is the saddest
A lot of these
story
animators
ever.
were depressives, though. Charles Schultz, the guy who did Garfield. I mean, Charles Schultz was a famous institutionalized depressive who used peanuts as his therapy, literally.
Really?
Depressed children.
Literally, peanuts was his therapy that he started drawing in, and I don't know if it's an asylum or somewhere like that, and it helped him. And that's why Charlie Brown is that kind of character.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really interesting because unlike filmmaking with animation, at least to an extent, you have a little element of control. With filmmaking, you always need to bring in other people when you're making something there. You know, it's just part of the process. With animation, it's possible, not necessarily likely, that you can do it all self-contained. Obviously not in the situations that you guys are in, but some of the shows have been single creator focused, right?
I mean, like Seth MacFarlane's show was pretty heavily
early on, especially some of these shows.
Yeah.
When one person's drawing.
Because that was based
Dr.
on
Katz, maybe.
Well, yeah, and Dr. Katz was probably animated by one guy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was somebody drank a lot of coffee.
Or sabotage.
I think that was even the guy who created Bob's Burgers. Maybe
Yeah, I think so.
did Dr. Katz.
Wow.
Yeah, Dr. Katz is
Lauren
fun.
Bouchard or
Home
something.
movies.
That was
The same guy.
Yeah.
There was this show that was on Cartoon or Adult Swim called Lucy, Daughter of the Devil, and I loved that show, and I think they only did 2 seasons and then it disappeared.
See, I'm not that familiar. I'm only familiar with that from people, Golan fans, you know, just on Twitter, be like, this reminds me of that or
It's
something.
hilarious, and it was really bad, like computer animation, like it was fuzzy computer animation, but just the scripts were hilarious. It was just about a guy who is, well, it's Satan, and his daughter who's trying to escape the fact that she's Satan's daughter, like she's trying not to have the celebrity status. And Satan is like just a wacky businessman. It's the same guy who voices Bob of Bob's Burgers. I don't remember his name.
H. John Benjamin?
That's it. H. John. He plays the devil, and like he opens up a Mexican restaurant in one of them, and yeah, it's just hilarious. I wish.
You know what would have been cool
back.
is if one of the best animations I think ever in terms of like adult us, the Creepshow animations in Creepshow, and especially Creepshow 2.
So I'm wearing it.
If they could have been a whole movie like that, I would die to see EC Comics.
I was always
animated.
surprised that they, I mean, granted, they only did 2 Creepshow movies, but
Wait.
There's a third one here.
well, a real Creepshow. But they would have had like an animated segment just to mix it up, because I like that they did that in ABCs of Death. Granted, it was I think a short I'd even seen before that movie existed, that just someone had made and given it to him. But the claymation one, where the kid's eaten by like the toilet or whatever's going on.
Well, we were talking about our childhood kind of cartoons from the 80s, but then like again, this is a problem with where I watched it in New Zealand. Aeon Flux came on as this weird late night. You'd only get very short parts of it. It wasn't a very long show. I think it was like a few minutes.
I think that's how it was here, because it was part of Liquid Television.
Yeah.
But so
Liquid
incredibly
television.
like sexual and strange.
It was
in
creepy
the world.
and weird.
Yeah, and you're really like, oh shit, I want to watch it. And you didn't even know what it was called. Like, I think for the first few times I caught it, I didn't even know what it was called. And I'd be like, what was that thing? And there was no internet yet. I think it was just before for me when the internet came. So I couldn't look it up. And I was like, what was that? And I just hoped to see it again. And then I did. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So what are some of those kind of adult animated shows that kind of maybe rehooked you, or you're already into the stuff that you'd looked out for?
Oh, like rehooked me again later, or when
Yeah,
I was
like
younger?
later. I'm thinking more like when you're an adult, like or like at 16 and above.
Yeah, I remember when Heavy Metal was
Yeah.
one of those
Heavy Metal.
weird movies that would be on when I was a kid, and I didn't realize that it was edited for television because it didn't occur to me that a cartoon would ever need to be edited for
Has
television.
anyone done a 35 millimeter screening of that in LA?
I mean, that's one of those that I would just say yes,
Mike has it on 16.
but I don't know.
I'd
Like,
love
I
to
don't
see that.
It just seems like such a perfect movie
Yeah.
to screen.
Somebody asked a couple of months ago on the show if you could see one movie made 3D theatrical, what would it be? And I said Heavy Metal.
Yeah, that'd be
It would be
3D
amazing.
theatrical?
3D theatrical of Heavy
Crawl.
Metal. Crawl was
I've
never
already
in
seen it.
3D.
I've already seen it in 3D, but I would watch it
No, you
again.
didn't.
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
But that was definitely one I saw in high school. And I remember when I was a kid, I liked the John Candy section where he's like a guy or like a kid who becomes some big buff Conan guy in another world. And then seeing it again in high school, it was kind of like, oh, these other ones, because there's some like creepy horror stuff in there. I remember there's like a segment that's like in World War II where there's guys in like a bomber. Because there's that weird green orb that kind of goes into every segment and like fucks shit up in some supernatural way. But like zombies, like his crew gets shot and he like goes back and like sees them all dead, which is creepy. And then they turn into zombies and like attack the co-pilot and pilot and stuff, and like so things like that. I was like, oh, so I've always been interested by the idea because you think that like a cartoon can't be scary, but sometimes it can if it's done right. And I think that's like Heavy Metal was really interesting to see again with kind of more adult eyes. I haven't really seen it since I've been like an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd actually like to revisit that now.
I think it's a cool goal for someone out there to be like, I want to make a TV show that's animated like a Walking Dead, but like the original comic that would actually unnerve and scare people.
Yeah, I can't
Like that to me is a really
Yeah.
cool goal. And I think the reason why we don't have one is because probably they don't make enough to get to
No.
that.
I can't call this scary, but Metalocalypse definitely had some gory moments on there that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. It was much more humor, but
Yeah.
it definitely
And
was
that's
very...
the thing that's kind of easy. And even like my show, it's like, although in the Shame on P, when the little kid gets like possessed, my girlfriend was like, ugh. So I was like, oh, that's cool. You can be kind of weirded out by it. But yeah, it usually kind of has to be couched in horror.
Unless it's
comedy.
Japanese. In
Exactly.
Japanese,
That's what I was just going to
The
say.
first one for me
Go
was
for
Perfect Blue, which felt like a Brian De Palma movie. I mean, it felt like Dressed to Kill or something, and it was a really good movie on its own, but it was also dark, and it was like all about obsession and stalkers.
And those are weird ones, or at least for me, were weird to see when I was a kid, like Vampire Hunter D.
Oh, yeah.
And there's another one called
seen
like
that one.
Wicked City. That have like really cool, creepy monsters and stuff. But there was something as a kid, you know, growing up with Friday the 13th and stuff. Like, I mean, there's old monster movies like Universal, and then there's what I considered kind of horror movie that I grew up. And even though these would have monsters killing people, there was something about that anime tone that it felt separate to me in like a weird way. And I would love, they were saying, I would love to see some sort of merging.
like
of,
True Detective, like the guy who makes True Detective going, you know what, I'm going to make a show that's animated and it's going to fuck you up. I'd love to see that, like,
They'd
or
make
Hannibal or
It
something.
would be so expensive.
Yeah.
And no network would
They'd
do
make it
it.
a video game because they did a couple of years ago. I can't even remember the name of it, but there was a Japanese noir murder mystery video game. Why can't I remember the name of it? I gotta
Dick,
look.
I think-
I'm just curious why Dick wants to shit on my dreams. Like, he comes into this room.
Oh, it's so
Expensive. Your dreams are
You can't
pricey.
do that.
Can't you just draw it? Just draw it.
Well,
Draw it now.
For me, I think MTV was really kind of the leader in terms of bridging that gap between the cartoons you saw as a kid and then what's kind of adult. Because as you mentioned with Eon Flux, but like I was a huge comic fan, and I loved the Max as a comic book. That was a Sam Keith, thing. You would draw the Hulk and all sorts of stuff. So when that became adapted as an MTV show, all of a sudden we're like, oh. Now we're getting weird like adult cartoons based on adult comic books. Even Spawn.
Which suits.
Who did Spawn? Was that an HBO?
That was
thing?
HBO.
Yeah, I mean that was like kind of there was like violence and sex in it and stuff.
Right.
Like,
The
comic book
okay.
was intense.
And that's what the comic was. But you're like, oh, okay, now they could do that.
No, Spawn.
know?
That I remember when that was on. That I wouldn't necessarily say it was mind blowing, but it was definitely interesting. Of like, wow, like
Yeah, they're going for
a
it.
real adult cartoon. Because again, there was something about the anime stuff, and just knowing that it was foreign, it just felt separated to me
Those-
from the horror that I liked. And so Spawn was like, this is on HBO or whatever it was on Showtime. It was one of those pay channels. I'm just guessing.
Spawn was also the first time I bought, quote, like adult themed action figures like that obviously were not for little kids. We miss you, Todd McFarlane. Come back to us.
What does he do now?
He makes sports toys.
Sports toys.
Really?
Yeah, he makes sports
His
toys.
Spider-Man series was so good. I always hope that's where
It's not as good as you remember.
Well, the lizard stuff I remember being really
No,
great.
it was really great when you were a 16-year-old, but if you read it now, it's not good at all.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
And
Trust me, I've tried.
The frightening Japanese noir video game that should have been a cartoon movie I talked about was called Rain. You would actually
I heard of
okay.
it. Yeah, I've heard of that too.
really
yeah.
fun game, but I would have liked it better as a movie, but I'm sure it made more
Were
as a
you guys
video
ever
game.
aware of the British comedy show called Count Duckula?
Yes, I never really saw it.
See that when you grow up in New Zealand, or any of those fringe countries, you get equal British and American stuff. So you're never really sure where stuff comes from. Whereas in America, you get American stuff. Count Duckula was good. It was funny. My memory
What
is
era was that?
the same as DuckTales and stuff
Okay.
like that.
Oh, we
that's
had
right.
Darkwing Duck.
I
He
remember
was kind of
Darkwing Duck,
kick-ass.
yeah.
Kinda
But
like
Count
the-
Duckula,
yeah.
look at if you can find
remember
something.
that,
I remember
yeah.
it being smart and funny and weird, but it was all just, it wasn't scary.
And the shirt
It
I'm
was-
wearing, Gargoyles, came from that era as well.
That's
which
90s,
was a
right?
Disney.
Early
Yeah,
90s.
this
Yeah.
was early 90s.
And Mummies Alive was
Didn't see
during that
that
time
one.
too.
Real Monsters. I also
Real
watched
Monsters,
a
yeah.
lot of that during that time, too.
I was at that point a little too old for it, but I caught a couple episodes and was like, I would have loved this when I was a kid. Was Courage the Cowardly Dog?
Oh, that show's wonderful.
don't
It's
know.
great.
And that would like the episodes I saw of that were pretty weird. Like they were really pushing it.
There was also one that came out later, which I want to say was on Nickelodeon, Grim and Eddie. It was like a guy's best friend
That was,
was
I mean,
death.
I never saw it, but that was the show.
No, that was Cartoon Network.
Okay, that was Cartoon
Yeah,
Network.
It was The Grim Adventures of Mandy and somebody else.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
one that I always looked at, and I was like, man, if I'd been like 10, this would have been my jam.
Yeah.
So.
What was the show you wanted to bring up that you? Because
Well, there was Groovy
it.
Ghoulies, which
Groovy Ghoulies is awesome.
I don't remember. But Mad Monster Party
Yes.
was
Wait, that's like the old '60s one.
Yeah.
stop motion
Claymation, yeah.
I mean,
That's
Claymation's
my-
like a different bag.
I watch that every Halloween
Yeah.
morning. Mad Monster Party.
So I tagged you guys in
Yes,
my
yeah.
nightmare today. So we used to have, and I remember we had this VHS. It was like the clamshell, and it was called The Adventures of Mark Twain.
That
And-
was some freaky shit.
I
I'll be
know.
honest,
That's
I never saw
crazy.
it before.
And I remember having that. And I mean, the whole movie wasn't quite that freaky. A lot of it was like, we're going to colonial days and things like that. And it was supposed to be Mark Twain could travel through time and was taking these kids along. And then at one point, they go to a planet with Satan, and Satan brings to life these little clay people who then kill each other, and then he kills them and says, this is the essence of humanity, is to destroy itself. And it is the most fucked up scene ever.
Death
have
has
a
like a
funeral.
super
Yeah. Crazy.
creepy voice too. It's like,
And he's very theatrical, where he's wearing this almost like Baroque costume, but he works only as a mask with his facial expressions changing constantly. It's so fucked up. I don't
Definitely didn't see that.
Yeah, I wish I still had my original VHS copy of it, but they go for like hundreds of dollars now. Like it's super hard to find.
Yeah.
So if you see one, I'll pay
Claymation
for
is
it.
a whole different bag. I mean, Jan Svankmajer from the Czech school has a whole school of like real animation. His films are pretty amazing, and they are very different. I remember like Tool's video clip was one of the first I remember, where you're like, oh wow, what am I watching? Like you could just see the work in it, and the craft, but you're not really scared. Brothers Quay, there's all these different people. Brothers Quay, I think, as William Malone talked about, Institute Benjamin, I think was the one, but that was a big influence on it. And you're like, that makes sense then. And it's interesting to see how these, it's a very different thing in a sense, but it's really takes the same laborious time, right, to create human animation there.
Well, for you two, for Elric and Rebecca, because obviously you guys have kids now, and they're very young at this point. So it's like, I don't know, what age do you think is going to be appropriate for everything from Scooby Doo to like a Paranorman type of thing? Like, what age do you think they'll be ready to see some of that stuff?
She's showing Sailor, right?
Yeah, all the time. I mean,
Marty's seen Sailor already
watch that
too.
daily.
I see Marty, she goes, Pasolini.
No, Marty's
Sailor, the
already
animated
big
series.
into Scooby Doo. Like it was a Scooby Doo birthday party this year
Right,
for her
right.
because she
She's-
is so diehard into Scooby Doo. She's already told me she wants to be Velma for Halloween.
Nice. That's cute.
So yeah, she's
she is
just adorable.
two?
2.5.
Yeah.
So, though I almost wonder if at 2, you are into it because you don't know to be scared yet. And then at 3, 4, once you become more articulate, the more articulate you become, the more scared you can become, the more everything you can be, the more conscious you are.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if where my 4-year-old is, because he's 4, I feel like he's protecting himself from things. So I'm not like when Sean Keller came on, we did an episode about, showing
Watching martyrs with your kids.
Watching martyrs with your 8-year-old. I'm in no hurry because here's the thing: nightmares. And I'll tell you one thing as a parent. And one thing, you want your child to sleep through the night.
Yes,
because if they
that
don't
is a
sleep
big
through the night,
thing.
you're being woken up, and your child will not sleep through the night once they're involved in horror. And it's as simple as that. We just bought him a dream catcher when we were up in the thing, and now he's like, "Oh, all my dreams will be fine now." I'm like, "Yes, that's right."
It's weird shit that she's scared of. Like she's got this gorilla monkey puppet thing I have in her room, and one night she was screaming, and I walked in, and I'm like, what's going on? And she was like, I don't like him, and she wanted him put in the cabinet.
Yeah, that's because the things that are coming for you are hiding in that taunt her to get to you. They're going to drive her crazy to get to you. Watch the nightmare
That
run.
monkey thing is actually trying to kill me. But like Gravity Falls.
That is fun. I have to admit,
I
that's
watch
really
it
fun.
all the time. I don't think Marnie understands most of it yet, but there have been some moments in that have scared her. There's the one, there's an episode where it's the shapeshifter, and he's been locked into this like cryo area, and I mean, it's a scary scene where they think it's this old man, and then all of a sudden his head elongates and it becomes this spider creature, which is like a clear reference to the Thing. Like it looks like the creature from the Thing, but just the morphing is really frightening. And even she was like, too scary, and then I change it.
I just know for me, I discovered this shit on my own. No one, I mean, somebody did sit me down to watch Creepshow and fuck me up, but beyond that, it's like I would, it's staying up late and turning the channel and discovering. And I don't know how to do that with kids because I'm already into this stuff.
Yeah.
Get off my lawn.
But I don't want to force it. I see a lot of our friends and from Sean Keller to Jerry Smith and all these guys who are showing their kids stuff, and that's awesome. But I personally just want them to, if they're going to discover it, that's them.
Yeah.
You know?
Josh, do you consider? I mean, who's Golan? What's your audience when you're writing Golan? What's your audience that you're thinking of? I mean, do you think of kids? Do you think of young adults? Do you
I
think
never really
of
thought of
adults?
kids and young adults just in the sense that I was like, I would love this show.
Right.
Like, I'd like to think I would still like it now, but I feel like you get kind of judgmental once you get a little older. But I hear some people compare it to like Rick and Morty, which is a show I genuinely like and watch on my own.
Both of them are my big discoveries this last month.
But my big thing, it makes me really happy when I see on Twitter a lot of like tween and teenage girls posting about how much they like Dylan. Because Golan's just, he can do whatever he wants because he's just the bad guy. It's like Dylan, the little girl's like the kind of emotional anchor of the show. So she's the one in a way I care more about. Like, and I assume people will like Golan because he's funny.
Right.
Like I'm happier when people submit like fan art of Dylan or like take pictures of themselves with Dylan eye makeup on.
Yeah.
So that's my goal. My real goal is that I want some big fat dad out there to go as Golan for Halloween with his like little daughter as Dylan.
That's funny.
You want Comic-Con.
Exactly.
You want Comic-Con costumes walking around.
Once I see that, then I'm like, I'm done.
That's what's crazy about Adventure Time is seeing people dress
Oh,
up.
that
It is
everywhere.
insane.
I see adults dressed
Yes.
as
Yeah, I
Finn
think
from Adventure Time.
I might dress as something from Adventure Time. I'll come up with something good. Actually, for Halloween, I think I want to do Wendy from Gravity Falls. But at Adventure Time, I remember Comic-Con a couple of years ago, you guys had Lady Rainicorn, and you had a giant, like, Chinese dragon version with like a taiko drumming. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
and it walked all through the streets of the town. It was amazing. It was like an Adventure Time parade.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
We like tried to take over Comic-Con that year.
It was
insane.
That was because you guys had that giant. It wasn't a cat. It was like it was the main dog
Jake.
from Jake. You had the giant
Yeah.
Jake inflatable.
Well,
it was huge.
And now we have Finn and Jake in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Which is
wow.
insane.
If it's not Lumpy Space Princess, I'm not watching. She's kind of
They've
amazing.
gotten quite surreal. Like I one that Dash started watching for a while, and I honestly just stopped it because I thought it was too maybe damaging to his brain because it's so fucking weird. Is The Adventures of Gumball? I'd watch an episode of Gumball and I kind of would enjoy it, but I'd be like, there's a talking piece of toast. There's a moose. Then there's this like weird crippled thing. I mean, I'm like, this is fucking so weird. How can this not mess with your brain?
Yeah.
I mean, it is weird.
It's an awesome show.
It is really
It's a
smart.
Cartoon Network show
yeah.
that's produced in the UK.
Oh, I didn't know that. It
Yeah,
seems
it's-
American.
Wow.
It's not.
They
at
portray
all.
it like it's taking
Yeah.
place in America. But if you haven't seen this, check out even a minute of it and you'll be like, oh my God, what is the show? Like, I don't even know what it is. I couldn't explain to someone what that show is.
Yeah.
But it's funny and it's interesting. But
I think Bekah mentioned this before, but I was watching a Rick and Morty that referred to
I Cronenberged up the world.
Yeah,
Morty.
yeah, like these people keep becoming weird creatures, and he's like, "Oh, there's like a Cronenberg world now."
Yeah.
That's so
pretty
freaking
funny.
funny.
And they use it as a verb. I Cronenberged
Yeah,
it.
Cronenberg is great. He's like, we can live in this Cronenberg world if we want, but we.
But
you guys ever
what
see
if I-
Fears in the Dark? That
Yeah, I
anthology? I never saw it.
I was actually going to bring that up. Because I
Yeah,
listened
yeah.
to you guys, your anthology episode, and I kind of kept expecting it.
Yeah, I never saw
never
it. Is
saw it. I
cool?
never
What's the
watched
story
it.
with
Yeah,
that.
Fears of the Dark, the S in parentheses
Yeah.
for some reason. It's a French cartoon.
Black
I
and
assume
white.
someone brought it up to you guys after your episode.
I saw
No.
that
I've
it
never
existed
heard of
back in
this.
the day, and I just never watched it for some reason.
It's
I
a
don't know why.
French-produced cartoon. It's all black and white. Have you seen it?
I've only seen parts.
And being French doesn't really matter because it's like there's not a ton of dialogue. But they're all
really
kind of
doesn't.
weird and screwed up. But the last segment is kind of amazing, aside from just being really interestingly animated. Because I saw it at the New Art. I don't remember when it came out, mid-aughts sometime. And it was creepy. And it scared me not in like a jump scare kind of way. So I was surprised that I just found it kind of unnerving almost. I don't want to say like The Shining, since that movie scared me more than any other movie. It's
yeah.
not quite that scared, but like for just an animated thing. That's
The last one.
The very last segment.
I gotta watch it.
It's
'cause
about
it
a
did look
guy.
good.
It's like a guy. I think maybe he's like a criminal. It's like in a snowstorm, and he like ends up hiding in this like abandoned house, and it's pitch black inside. So it's all just white, like the way it's animated. If you can imagine, it's just always black everywhere, and then kind of where he manages to get some light, it'll now be like white, and so you can kind of see. And just some creepy stuff starts to happen.
And it's called Fears of the Dark.
Yeah,
Fears
it
of the
sounds
Dark with
really
an S.
cool.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever seen that Night of the Living Dead reanimated project?
No,
It's-
I've seen like
remember-
parts of it on.
Well, what it was
line,
I
but-
remember when it came out on DVD, I was working at Amoeba at the time, and essentially what it is, because of course everyone can exploit the hell out of Night of the Living Dead for the copyright thing. But from what I understand, it was they got several artists, and I mean like a dozen or so, that they recreated Night of the Living Dead from start to finish, but like every 2 minutes is a completely different artist.
Cool.
So it could be kind of like black and white, like weird cartoon drawing, and then it turns into kind of like, a completely different style or like anime or whatever. But it's essentially the whole movie, but just by several different animated artists.
Has that been released?
Yeah, it did. It came out on DVD. I've never checked it out. I'm sure there's probably snippets on YouTube or whatever. But I was curious.
I will say I just got the Society package. I've been watching it, and it's just loaded. I mean, it's loaded with stuff. But the really interesting thing, which I was surprised by, it comes with a full comic book of Society 2.
Sequel.
And it's not necessarily the one that Yuzna
outta
told
here.
us about when we interviewed him.
Really?
That Woody Keith, the writer of the first one, had more or less written.
Yeah.
I think it's some cartoonist's vision of what Society 2 would be. But it's a full cartoon. As a comic book, I was going to try to read it before we did this show, but I'll wait till next week because we're going to watch it between now and then, and to read it because I'm genuinely curious, like what it will be about.
Yeah.
But it looked really cool, and it came in this Arrow package that is just like full of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
beautiful.
it looks really good. So
Well, for you two guys, because obviously we all watch a lot of movies. Like, what do you guys look for in horror these days? Like, what do you look for a recommendation from somebody like, oh, this is a really weird, creepy movie, or like, do you just watch everything hoping that you'll find that one special thing?
I always prefer to watch everything, but as I get busier, that's just nothing feels worse than wasting your time on a bad Netflix movie. So now I try to get more recommendations, especially it was easier a few years ago when I was just kind of moonlighting for chud.com because I'd get sent stuff.
Yeah.
Like more stuff than I could even write about. So that was great. Now I feel like I have to rely on like people like you who still get sent all the stuff, or message Ryan Turek and be like, oh, you just went to this festival. Was there anything good? Especially because I also need to look for stuff for Fright Night Frights. Even though we mostly show old movies, it's really fun when we can find one that isn't already wrapped up with a distributor.
Yeah.
Like
Have
we
you
showed
ever-
The Battery, which
yeah.
was like
Lot
no
of
one
fun.
came.
was that good? I've heard good things.
Hardly anyone came, but that I think had the best people walking out of the theater reaction like proportional to
Yeah,
like
yeah,
every
it's great.
like there was maybe only 30 people there, but like
Oh, wow.
20 of them came out and were like, "Oh my god, that was amazing! Are you going to show it again?" I'm like, probably not. 'Cause
Yeah.
only 30
Came.
people came.
I was going to ask, is that one of the case? I mean, you saw that movie beforehand. Have you ever shown a movie for Friday Night Frights that you haven't seen?
No.
You just felt like,
Yeah,
it's definitely more stuff that you.
We've done sometimes. We'll do things where like because just Cinefamily has like a relationship with IFC, and every now and then, if we've like turned down too many, we'll kind of be like, we'll do that one, and I'll maybe only have kind of skimmed through it enough just to make sure like it's not horrible.
Right.
I won't name any of those, but even some of those, there's been a few that in my mind was just kind of like, yeah, sure, and then like it's kind of gone on to become a semi-classic. I mean, I'll even admit, like, Steakland was that one for me.
I love that movie.
I mean, like, I was like, that was like, I loved the beginning, and I was like, this is like a cool premise. Like, I dig it, but I don't know if I would have necessarily just like gone out of my way to show it. But then that was like a big one that a lot of people were like, that was great. I thought that was so cool. You showed it.
Yeah, a movie like that, if Walking Dead didn't exist, would do so much better. The same with, what was the Viggo Mortensen one?
The Road.
The Road.
Road.
Yeah, those kind of movies, had Walking Dead not existed, would feel really original. But because Walking Dead's a world that they're very much in that world, you know?
Yeah, but I think Steakland came out before Walking Dead, right?
did.
Yeah, it did. It was a while ago.
It did.
Quite a while ago. Yeah.
I think it's all at the
Definitely.
exact same time.
No.
I started
Hold on.
exactly the same time because we.
Hey guys, I have
because
a
we
magical
interviewed him.
device that will solve all of your problems.
In
right here.
3D.
No, we interviewed him on This Week in Horror. We had This Week in Horror. They had just had Steakland. We had This Week in Walking Dead. It existed already for like all season. So it's like the same. It was the same time when it came. Maybe theatrical.
I'm
Maybe
sorry.
theatricals before.
Steakland came out in 2010. Let's see when the first Walking Dead season
We have
was.
5 seasons.
5
Walking Dead or
years.
4.
Walking
We're on
Dead.
5 now.
4 and 5.
So
About the same
I think they
time.
timed the same time.
Yeah, it was
it
roughly
could have
around the
been
same
being shot before they'd seen it. But I'm talking about as an audience, you don't give a fuck about that. You don't care.
Yeah.
If something
Walking
took 3
Dead
years.
started in 2010. Damn
Yeah,
it,
so it's gonna be the
Elric.
same time.
Damn it when you're right.
I mean, it sucks to school Dick while he's here, but it feels kind of good.
No, and
that
Dick,
Grunert.
how do you find? I mean, you're pretty on top of giving us recommendations.
Yeah.
So how do you find stuff?
Festivals and I just scour the internet to try to find what people are talking about, and I mean, you guys are always have great recommendations too.
Do you go to any of the festivals, or you read about them?
local ones?
Well, you for a period you had it. One of your shorts was going to these festivals, so you were meeting these directors at the
Yeah.
festivals you were at.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to meet people way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
because you said with the iPhone one, Jennifer Help Us. You
yeah.
said you were like alone in a room.
Yeah, we were outside waiting to go in, and just
There's
started
no one there.
talking to the director Juan, and he was awesome, and
And there's a battery connection there because Jeremy Gardner wrote to me since our show aired.
Yeah.
And he wrote to me and said, hey, just so you know, that guy who helps on all of his stuff and will always help on his stuff, apparently, was shooting that movie, Jennifer Help Us, in the weekends breaks when he wasn't shooting a different production on a different crew or something.
And
So I was like,
one of my friends from the St. Mort podcast emailed me, and apparently he was like, I know that guy. When you mentioned it on the show, I couldn't fucking believe that you guys had heard of that.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
I need to check it out.
Yeah.
But Dick's really good for old recommendations, too, because I don't even remember how it came up, but we were at Jump Cut sometime, and you were like, yeah, my favorite movie, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. And I was like, I vaguely heard of it. I had not seen it. And because it was like your favorite movie, I was like, okay, I should watch this. And I love it. It's like hippie vampire horror.
Yep.
and you're why I rewatched May a couple weeks
exactly.
ago.
Hey, yeah.
No, I watched it for the first time, but you
Right.
had told me about it. And
Yeah,
I
we talk about it all the time. and
Well, before we wrap up, what are some of your all-time favorite genre movies? Like, if to people listening, what are the things that really mean something to you that you'd want to recommend?
Go.
No pressure. Other than May.
And Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
House of the Devil is my favorite horror movie of the
Boom.
last decade for sure.
Right on.
And then before that, I was a huge fan of Session 9. I
Yeah.
love
Oh,
that
yeah.
movie. It's such a slow burn, but it's so creepy.
That is when we've also debated at midnight and been like, I might be too slow.
I
Because
think
it doesn't
I
get
think
good until
slow.
people would
I
already
would
be
crash
asleep.
at midnight
Yeah, that
watching
one's
that.
tough.
It's great, but yeah.
And there was a movie from the 70s, The Evictors.
Oh, yeah.
That
never seen that.
Jessica
I
Harper.
reviewed that early on here. I didn't like it, but I know it's Jessica Harper.
Jessica Harper and
And it's the director.
Is that a
Is that the
sound
director?
good Sundown
It
one?
looks exactly like the town. It has the same aesthetic
well,
as town.
it's the
because
same
it's
director.
included.
Same
and it's
director, same
included
time.
on
Okay, yeah,
Blu-ray.
it's included on that Blu-ray. I haven't watched it yet.
It's great. It was like my mom's favorite movie. So.
Wow.
I think that must have been one that if you saw it at a certain time, it would have more.
Especially growing up in Wisconsin in
Yeah.
the middle of frickin' nowhere.
Because it has these flashbacks,
Yeah.
and it didn't really work for me now watching it contemporary, but I could see how it could have worked.
Yeah. So.
Interesting.
Josh?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is for me, the ones that like really affected me, like my favorite ones are all such big, no-brainer, obvious ones, like The Thing.
Yeah.
But Brain Dead is definitely one where, again, for like the longest time, like that was the movie that, especially kind of prior to the internet, it was like I made it up after my friends and I, because back when it was like not every video store would have everything, even though at that time the movie wasn't that old.
Yeah.
It was just my video store had it. And
Brain Dead, not dead alive.
Yes, exactly.
Everyone in New
1990s
Zealand just
Brain
got
Dead.
pissed off.
It's Elric here. And
With
Elric
Adam
X-ray.
Simon. Oh, and if you get Adam Simon on, I plan to bum rush him with the question at our Q&A. But fun fact about him, if you rewatch Robert Altman's Player, he opens that movie. If you guys are familiar with the
Really?
epic
I
9-minute
watched
shot.
it recently. The
Really?
opening
He's the
shot.
guy who first, when Tim Robbins first
pulls
pulls
up.
up, he's the guy who keeps bugging him, and he keeps going, "Who let Adam Simon on the lot?"
I got
And it was
got
only when I was looking him up again.
Wow. So that's him with
That's
Tim
him.
Robbins. Holy shit.
I just, it's kind of a common name, so I just never thought about it. And then, looking him up on the IMDb, I'm like, no, wait, that's him. That's
So what
Adam
was he
Simon.
back then? Like an assistant or?
Like his credits kind of don't even really go back that far. Knowing
interesting.
like he might have known Tim Robbins somehow.
Yeah.
Just since Tim Robbins' friends tend to kind of pop up. In
Right. And this is the
peripheral
guy who
parts.
does Salem now. He's the showrunner on Salem that we were just talking about.
But he wrote and directed Brain Damage.
Both wrote and
Brain
directed
Dead.
Brain Dead.
Brain
I think
Dead.
he also directed Carnosaur.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Which Buzz would love.
Yeah,
He's a big Dino fan.
We're gonna get him on for sure.
Oh, we never even talked about Eli Roth's big announcement this week.
Yeah.
Green Inferno.
Well, we can talk
Meg,
about that
Is
later.
that what it is? What's the
Meg,
big
he's
announcement?
got a big, the
Oh,
big
Meg,
shark
the shark
book,
movie.
yeah.
Giant
Yes.
shark movie.
Great.
It might be the only time I was kind of like, I kind of would
Oh,
like to
that's
watch
why
that.
he's hosting Shark Week.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Oh.
Well, then we
There's
talked
that
about
for
it.
ya.
That's that.
He might be the only director to get a big movie when his last two movies have yet to be released.
Yeah, yeah.
They are sitting on shelves somewhere. How is that possible? Like Green Inferno and the
Inferno's
Keanu
coming.
Reeves
I'm
thing.
sure it's
Knock, knock.
a
Knock, knock.
sold to his the devil or something. I guess.
Him and U-Bowl. They're selling it.
Football is done now.
U-Bowl's pretty much done. But he can play golf.
He decreed. Fuck all y'all. He can play golf.
Playing golf
He's playing
forever.
golf.
That sounds like my hell, playing golf forever.
Did you see Rob Zombie's doing?
Oh my
the
God. I thought that was a joke.
Yeah,
No, it's legit.
Wait, what?
What's he doing?
A Groucho Marx biopic.
Directed by Rob Zombie.
But written by... Who is it? It
it's
was
the guy who did
like a legit screenwriter director.
Is his wife going to play
Oh,
Groucho?
Owen Moverman. It's Owen Moverman who's the writer director of those like serious Woody Harrelson
You know what?
films.
I'm okay with that. I just, I want to see Rob Zombie make a serious movie.
Well,
You
but
want
it's
Sherry
supposed to be
Moon
like the
to-
last 3 weeks of his life, where the guy's living in his house. So it sounds like it's going to be kind of weird anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how Groucho's life ended, but either way, it sounds interesting. I think it's somewhere between that and Edgar Allan Poe's last few days.
At least,
It's gonna mix the two narrative.
we never got Rob Zombie's The Blob, which was going to happen at one point.
Yeah, I don't
so-
think we needed that one.
Top Chuck Russell.
Full
Right?
circle, the haunted world of Elle's Super Bestow.
Oh, yeah.
Full circle.
Animation.
Wow.
Mic drop.
Michael
Yeah.
Myers cameo in that as well.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true.
Nice.
Are we going to go out on the show? Because we usually sing as
No, we
leave.
don't.
But
What are you
like,
talking about?
come
When does that ever
along with
happen?
the snorks.
Swim along with the snorks.
Oh, God.
So
Happy
much
to
fun
be.
when
It's
you're
just
having
you
the
and
fun.
what the
No
fuck
one?
are you
No one?
singing?
I don't know.
I don't know what you
You
guys
don't
are
even
talking
know the
about.
Star
All right,
song.
fuck
All right,
y'all.
that's enough. That's enough.
Wow.
Watch
Thank you
their
so
shows.
much. Yeah, Golan The Insatiable is on Fox. What night does it air?
Sundays after Family Guy.
Here you go. Sundays after Family Guy. I watch it on Hulu Plus. If you have Hulu Plus, watch it that way. Adventure Time. When does it air?
I think we're Thursdays are the
All the
premieres.
time.
But it's not all the time.
Yeah. Or is it
Like our Cartoon
all the
Network.
time.
Really, it's
Cartoon
just-
Network.
Yeah.
It's
It's
on the
raining money.
Adventure
He's
Time
throwing money in
Network.
the air right now.
Dick's making it rain at Killer POV.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming and joining us.
Thank you.
Next week, David Scow returns.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's the Scout
That's
Show.
our
Scow is back.
The official fourth host of this show.
Yeah.
Should be fun.
Do you know what we're talking about?
No idea. The Crow.
We'll figure that out.
Crow. The Crow remake just lost their actor.
I know.
Yeah.
The last time I saw Scow, and I don't think he'll mind me saying this, he's like, I'm hoping that I'll die before they remake The Crow or Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's like, they keep threatening The Crow. He's like, but I'm pretty sure I'm good for a little while.
Yeah.
So,
Well, hopefully it won't be before next week that he dies. we're rooting for you, Scout. We're rooting
we
for
want you
you.
to live.
Pull through, man. Pull
It's early to do our show, then drop it dead on the way out. All right.
Thank you so much, Josh and Dick. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.